Hey guys, tonight we're traveling far back in time, deep into the heart of 9th century Ethiopia. The moon is rising over Axum, once a mighty empire, now quiet under the weight of history. Stand at the edge of the royal compound, a patchwork of black basalt stone structures, dimly lit by oil lanterns and the soft flicker of a fire beyond a carved stone gate. You hear almost nothing, just the crunch of your footsteps on gravel, the occasional brush of wind against ancient eucalyptus trees, and the far-off call of a hyena that's maybe, just maybe, too close for comfort. You're here for one purpose: to observe a ritual that few outsiders have witnessed. A ritual not of war or politics, but of warm water, soft oils, and eucalyptus steam. Yes, you've been invited to witness a queen take her nightly bath. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and if you're still awake, drop your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far we all reach, across the globe and through the fog of sleep. Now, dim the light, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge closer to the palace compound, guided by a robed servant whose feet barely make a sound on the polished path. The city behind you is fading. It's not the roar of civilization, but the whisper of an empire in its twilight, still grand, still proud, but quieter than it once was. And here in the royal quarters, the silence is cultivated. Purposeful above, the stars have begun to blink into place, like curious eyes. Axum's elevation makes the sky feel somehow closer, less of a ceiling, more of a canopy. You pass by fig trees with twisting roots that resemble sleeping giants. And as you enter the queen's private garden, a hush falls over everything, even your breath. It's cooler here, more fragrant. Frankincense curls from a carved lion's mouth by the wall, and you swear it's watching you. This isn't just any night. This is the third day of the lunar Sakela phase, traditionally associated with cleansing. And for Queen Zudikuse, a name later recycled by a future empress, but believed by some to originate centuries earlier, this night marks her most sacred bath of the month. Historians still argue whether this original Queen Zudeku was a literal monarch, a high priestess, or a symbolic figure retrofitted into royal myth. But for the sake of our story and your sleep, let's accept her as both divine and absolutely real. The compound is small but labyrinthine, its walls carved with lion heads, ibex, and stylized suns. You lead past a reflecting pool that looks like it hasn't reflected much in decades, covered in lily pads, half choked with vines. A toad croaks somewhere to your left, and it somehow feels regal. You're not alone. Two female guards flank a stone archway ahead. They're cloaked in rough wool, dyed in indigo and red clay. One holds a ceremonial spear tipped with obsidian that glints in the moonlight. They nod as you pass, to greet you, but to acknowledge that you've entered a space few ever see inside. The garden opens into a sunken courtyard that seems impossibly quiet. You could swear the air itself moves slower here. Even the flames of the torches flicker in a lazy rhythm. The queen's bathhouse is in the center, a dome-shaped building made of smooth, dark stone and trimmed with copper along the eaves, which catch the firelight like molten gold. At its peak, a tiny hole allows moonlight to pour straight down into the chamber like a divine spotlight, but you're not allowed in yet. First, you must witness the ritual of scent selection, a tradition so old that even the oldest palace records refer to it as from before the time of speech. A steward appears, no more than 15 years old, holding a tray of dried herbs, flowers, and powdered roots. Her job? To read the queen's dreams and select the right scent for the bath. Lavender for calm, frankincense for clarity, crushed. Orchid root for dreams. Tonight she selects blue lotus and myrrh. She dips a tiny spoon into the powder, lifts it to her nose, and nods solemnly. This is no mood-based choice. This is cosmological alignment, dream logic, ancestral whisper. You feel yourself swaying slightly, unsure if it's the heat from the nearby brazier or the sheer lull of this entire scene. Somewhere in the distance, a chorus of crickets begins to warm up like the overture to a very slow opera. The queen will soon appear, but not before the temple cats make their rounds. Yes, cats, 7 of them, one for each major constellation. They arrive like shadows, each with a copper bell around its neck, making almost imperceptible music as they slink between pillars. They sniff the herbs approvingly except one who decides the tray needs rearranging. The steward allows it. 2 is tradition. And then, a hush deeper than any before. The queen approaches. You do not turn to face her not out of fear, but reverence. She glides past you barefoot, draped in a linen wrap, dyed with indigo, and trimmed in hammered silver. Her hair is braided into a crown, with a sprig of some flower tucked just behind her ear. Scent reaches you before she does. Sandalwood, rosewater, and something earthy maybe. The pollen you saw being sifted earlier in the day. She pauses beside the incense brazier and closes her eyes. You're close enough to hear her whisper something, though you can't make it out. A prayer, perhaps. A memory. Or maybe she's just asking the cats not to knock over the tray again. With one motion, she enters the bathhouse. The copper doors swing open silently, pulled by a system of ropes and counterweights designed so she never has to be touched. You've made it to the threshold of the queen's most intimate ritual, and yes, you'll survive, probably. You step through the copper doors behind the queen slowly, reverently. The air shifts as you enter, becoming thicker, warmer, scented with layers of old stone, sacred oils, something floral that almost smells like memory itself. The inside of the bathhouse is round, like a perfectly sliced geode, its walls lined with polished basalt tiles that gleam with a thin layer of moisture. Above, the small circular skylight lets in a beam of moonlight that dances over the water. Below, like a silent blessing, you keep to the edge of the chamber, your bare feet cooled by the wet stone. In the center lies the bath itself, more of a pool, really. It's carved directly into the ground, rimmed with faintly glowing mineral. Inlays that form constellations, only visible when firelight catches them just right. A few of the stones flicker now, pulsing gently like heartbeat lights. You wonder if it's the minerals reacting to the steam or something stranger. Historians still argue whether this constellation map was simply decorative or a functional celestial calendar linked to old solstice rituals. The queen stands at the edge of the pool now, arms raised slightly as to handmaidens undo her wrap with practiced care. They never speak. Everything here is done with gesture, breath, and the gentle clinking of jewelry. The linen falls away like mist, and underneath, her skin is painted faintly in ceremonial ash whirls and arcs that follow the curves of her back, her shoulders, and down her arms. She lowers herself into the bath slowly, as though entering a sacred river. The water barely ripples, despite the descent. You're surprised by the size of the pool. It could fit 6, maybe more, but it's clear this space is for her alone. A single polished obsidian mirror hangs nearby, untouched. Not for vanity. It's for reflection, literal and spiritual. At once, 3 attendants move in graceful tandem. One pours warm water laced with blue lotus over the queen's shoulders from a large copper ewer. Another begins to grind petals with a curved stone pestle nearby, releasing their aroma into the room. The third waves a woven fan soaked in sandalwood water, not to cool the queen, but to spread the steam and scent across the chamber. You find yourself inhaling deeply, even unconsciously. It's oddly soothing, like the world is being filtered through rosewood and warmth, and then there's chanting, low at first, almost like humming. You realize it's coming from a hidden corridor behind the chamber wall. The voices are female, resonant, and not entirely in unison. It's a layering of tones, some high and warbling, others deep and humming, like a cat's purr. This isn't a performance. This is spellwork ancestral song bathing the queen's body as much as the water does. A handmaiden brings a bowl filled with finely ground eucalyptus bark and crushed ochre. She begins to rub it along the queen's arms in gentle, circular motions. The mixture leaves a reddish tint, which seems to shimmer slightly in the low light. This isn't just exfoliation, it's armor. It's ritual protection for the days ahead, according to one obscure 12th century manuscript. Ethiopian queens were believed to absorb power through the skin during baths, making the preparation of each Scrub a matter of divine engineering. You shift your stance, the stone floor warming beneath your feet. The steam begins to fog the mirror, and for a moment, your own reflection flickers beside the queen's, ghost-like, ephemeral. You blink and it's gone. From a small carved alcove, a servant approaches carrying what looks like a stone disc. On closer inspection, it's soap hand-milled from goat's milk and wild honey, infused with something slightly citrusy. The scent is clean, sharp, and grounding. As the queen breathes it in, her eyes flutter closed. She's not just bathing. She's communing with her ancestors, with her past selves. With the quiet gods of this land who live in wind and flame and eucalyptus leaves. The water moves now, just slightly creating soft sounds that echo across the chamber. Not sloshing, more like murmuring. You wonder if it's the shape of the room that makes it sound like voices or something else entirely, and here's where things get a little unexpected. A servant enters carrying what appears to be an ancient scroll. No protective case, no gloves, just bare hands in quiet reverence. She begins to read softly from it, in Jez, the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The queen listens with one ear tilted toward the sound, her shoulders glistening. You catch a few phrases, though the meaning is lost. References to lions, rivers, stars falling from trees. Some scholars believe these bath-time readings were taken from dream records. Poems meant to anchor the queen's subconscious before she slept. And now a quirky bit you probably didn't see coming. A bowl of small, smooth stones is passed around, and each handmaiden places one in a particular spot along the bath's edge. Each stone is inscribed with a single symbol, some astrological, others animalistic. It's believed this was a kind of fortune-telling grid formed fresh every night. If a stone fell into the water during the bath, it was considered a sign, though not always a good one. Superstition? Maybe, but you still find yourself watching the edge of that bath like it's the climax of a thriller. A bird cries out somewhere outside. Just one shrill note that echoes through the open skylight and disappears. It feels perfectly timed, like a cue for the next part of the ritual. One servant steps forward, holding a bowl of cold water and a bundle of thin reeds. With slow, rhythmic movements, she begins to flick the cool water onto the queen's back. Not harshly, gently, almost teasingly. You'd think it'd break the spell, but it doesn't. It intensifies it. The queen lets out a breath so deep, you almost mistake it for laughter. Scholars still debate whether this part of the bath was meant for circulation, purification, or simply sensation. But it has persisted in descriptions from as late as the 15th century, long after many other elements were lost. The chanting slows. The incense burns lower. The light through the skylight has shifted, becoming more silver than blue. Sense the bath nearing its end. The queen dips fully beneath the water now, disappearing for just a moment before resurfacing in silence. Her face is calm, cleansed, somewhere between human and celestial. And for the first time since you entered, she speaks just 3 words, too soft for you to catch, but enough to give you goosebumps. There's a stillness now, the kind that feels earned, like the whole chamber is exhaling alongside her. Steam coils lazily toward the ceiling. The chant has fully faded, and the only sound left is the soft dripping of water sliding off stone and skin. The queen remains seated in the bath for a moment longer, unmoving, her eyes closed. Her hair floats around her like black silk, gently swaying in the water's rhythm. The ceremonial ash painted on her body has mostly washed away, leaving faint reddish ghosts of the markings behind, like memories of armor. Not quite erased. One by one, the attendants retreat, bowing low before backing out through side passages hidden behind woven drapery. You're left standing in silence with the queen, the water, and the sound of your own breathing. It's oddly intimate, not in a scandalous way, but in the way sacred spaces often are. Like you're witnessing something never meant to be retold, even as you're already rewriting it in your mind. Then, from a stone shelf embedded in the wall, a final servant older than the others steps forward. She carries a folded cloth of pale blue linen and an amulet resting atop it. The linen, you've learned, was woven by hand during the full moon 3 months ago, a tradition meant to imbue it with lunar blessings. The amulet? That's trickier. It's shaped like a bird, with wings flared. Tiny inscriptions line its edges, of which scholars still haven't fully translated. The best guess is that it's a symbol of divine passage, not death necessarily, but transformation. Some say it represents the queen's ability to move between the human realm and something older. She lifts the amulet gently, hands it to the queen without words. The queen wraps her fingers around it and places it against her sternum holding. It there for 5 full breaths. Then, eyes still closed, she sets it into a shallow niche carved into the bathos edge. It fits perfectly, like a key returned to its lock. You're told no one but she may touch it again until the next moon. The blue linen is then draped over her shoulders, not to dry, not to cool. The final step. One that marks the return from the sacred into the everyday. She stands, water slipping from her in rivulets. And in that moment, it's clear. This isn't just a queen emerging from a bath. It's a monarch rising from ritual. Body anointed, spirit cleansed. Myth reinforced, her eyes open again, and for a heartbeat, they meet yours. It's not just acknowledgement, it's transmission. You've seen, and now you carry it, and then, with steps as soft as falling petals, she disappears into the shadows beyond the basalt archway. The only thing left behind is steam curling where she once stood, and the faint shimmer of mineral stars still glowing beneath the water's surface. A breath, a pause, and the dream begins to dissolve. You're left wondering how many such nights were there? How many queens whispered to the water? How many rituals were lost, silent as steam into the folds of time? More curiously, what ancient parts of us are still waiting to be washed clean? The queen has vanished behind the basalt archway, leaving behind only mist and memory. But your steps carry you forward, deeper into the palace, compound not by command, but by curiosity. You're not alone. A handful of older attendants, wrapped in faded linens, guide you silently through a narrow hallway lit by flickering oil lamps, nestled in hollowed-out stone alcoves. You notice the air shift again, less steamy now, tinged with the sharp scent of crushed myrrh and wood smoke. One of the attendants points subtly to the ground, and you follow her finger to a curious detail. A shallow channel carved directly into the stone floor. It's no wider than a finger, leading forward like a tiny riverbed. It gets the bathwater's path. Not merely drained away, but guided. The queen's used bathwater flows with quiet dignity through this narrow channel. Winding its way through the palace toward the outer courtyards, it's not discarded, it's revered. A sacred runoff. Some call it a poetic euphemism, perhaps, but a telling one. This water has touched royalty, and therefore, in the worldview of 9th century Ethiopian court life, has touched the divine. You follow it. Eventually, the channel opens up into a lush, enclosed garden, and close to garden, expectedly vibrant for such a dry region. A grove of frankincense trees stands in orderly clusters, their pale bark flaking like parchment, scenting the air with a crisp sweetness. Beneath them, rows of medicinal herbs flourish: basil, rue, fenugreek, and a soft-leafed plant you can't identify, but whose blue flowers seem to hum under the moonlight. Here, the sacred bathwater nourishes more than soil. It sustains ritual. Several women, their heads wrapped in cloths dyed with natural indigo, work quietly in the garden under torchlight. They prune leaves with deliberate care, whisper prayers into the stems, and collect bundles of plants into woven baskets. These herbs will later be dried, burned, ground into poultices, or steeped into the queen's tea. And yes, many will find their way back into the ritual bath itself, completing the cycle. You lean in to smell one of the bundles. The scent is unexpected, spicy, sharp, a little sour. You wrinkle your nose, and an attendant chuckles. She says something in a dialect you can't quite follow, but another woman translates with a grin. Smells like power. Worse. There's a plant here, they tell you. It's used especially during the queen's moontime baths, when her body is believed to be closest to the earth, and thus, paradoxically, most potent. It's not just superstition. Some of these herbs have antibacterial properties. Others are natural anti-inflammatories or mood balancers. The line between sacred and science, here, is thinner than you'd expect. Historians still argue whether the Ethiopian court's herbal traditions stemmed more from ancient Kushite practices or early Christian monasteries that preserved Greco-Roman medical texts. The truth is probably both. What's clear is that these women healers, farmers, which is depending on who's writing the history, hold knowledge, is passed down not through books, but through finger-stained green. You pause near a stone basin where the last of the bathwater pools. A toad is resting there, unbothered. Above it, carved into the stone lip of the basin, is a glyph. 2 concentric circles, one inside the other, connected by 4 lines. The symbol of balance, you're told. Of wholeness. You start to wonder, was this ritual only about cleanliness, or was it about claiming that wholeness? Each bath not just a refresh, but a return to power, to purpose, to the world as it should be. Before you leave the garden, you're offered a small clay vial sealed with beeswax and wrapped in dyed thread. Inside, you're told, is a few drops of the Queen's last bathing oil. You're not to open it, just to carry it. For dreams, the woman says, so you tuck it into your robe and step away. Back into the corridor where the oil lamps flicker like little stars. Behind you, the herb women hum a tune that sounds like wind brushing against stone, lullaby without words. Ahead lies the Queen's sleeping chamber. But don't worry, we won't peek. Not yet. You emerge from the garden, your senses still tingling with the scent of herbs and the softness of distant humming. The clay vial sits warm in your pocket, as though it remembers the Queen's bath. Ahead, the stone corridor narrows and darkens. It's quieter, hear no birds, no voices. It's just the sound of your own breath and the faint trickle of water. It's disappearing into the walls. You duck beneath a low lintel and enter a circular chamber unlike any you've seen. It's the anointing room. The walls are curved, smoothed to perfection, covered in faded murals that depict women seated on stones, oils dripping from their hands onto bowls of incense and open flames. The ceiling, a dome pierced with tiny holes, filters moonlight into silvery dots that drift across the stone floor like fallen stars. You move slowly, as if walking across the night sky. In the center stands a wide, squat table carved from volcanic rock, stained darker from centuries of use. On it, dozens of small vessels, some bronze, some ceramic, others made of dried gourds or polished ivory. Contains a specific oil or resin used in the Queen's post-bathing ritual. A blend of sacred science and practiced sensuality. 1. Attendant approaches, holding a folded cloth soaked in water and eucalyptus. She gently wipes your arms and face. It stings slightly. The eucalyptus is strong, but beneath it, your skin feels new, cleansed again. Stripped not just of dirt, but of yesterday, the anointing begins. You're not the Queen, of course, but the ritual is demonstrated as if you are. A young woman, no more than 17, dips her fingers into a thick amber oil and touches your forehead slowly, carefully. She draws a line down your nose, along your cheekbones to your jaw. The oil smells like crushed almonds and rain-soaked bark. A royal recipe. This isn't mere perfuming. No, this is medicine. It's moisture-locking, sun-blocking, spirit-smoothing medicine. The Queen receives a full-body anointing here every night. After bathing, her attendants memorize the pattern of strokes, the way oil must be warmed by hand before being applied, how certain pressure points release tension, how every drop must be offered with silent intention. One oil, called kibanelneta, contains a blend of moringa and lion's tail. It's said to keep joints limber and skin glowing because, yes, even in the 9th century, court life is basically a never-ending spa. But here's the twist. One of the oils contains powdered gold. Yes, real gold. Ground so finely it feels like flour. It doesn't do much medically, but oh, does it shimmer. The Queen glows under torchlight, her skin flecked with celestial light. Is it vanity? Maybe, but it's also a performance of divinity. You don't rule a kingdom just with laws, you rule it with aura. Historians still argue whether the inclusion of gold was symbolic, meant to evoke the queen's connection to the sun goddess, or whether it was just an early flex. After all, if you're going to bathe in sacred herbs, you might as well sparkle. But don't forget the political angle. These oils weren't made in-house. They were imported, some from Nubia, others from the Arabian Peninsula. Their arrival was a public event, signaling not just wealth, but reach. When the queen's scent carries hints of frankincense from Dhofar or lotus oil from the Nile, she's wearing a map on her skin. The attendants continue. One oils your wrists, another your feet. A third places a small cloth sachet between your palms and closes your fingers over it like a prayer. Inside, cloves, black cumin, and a sliver of cinnamon bark. For courage. She whispers. You suddenly realize how many layers this ritual holds. It's hygiene, sure, but also aromatherapy, diplomacy, armor, theater, every scent chosen. Touch, purposeful. Even the placement of the oil vessels follows a pattern of miniature. Cosmology laid out on stone. You look up and notice a fresco on the dome above. A painted queen lies surrounded by stars, her body stretched across the sky. Below her, mortals look up with awe, some with fear, some with longing, none with indifference. You feel the warmth of the oil soaking into your skin. Your limbs grow heavy, but not tired, just relaxed. The kind of relaxed you feel when someone else is steering the ship, and all you have to do is exist. One attendant begins humming. Again, low and slow, and you join without thinking. It's a tune you've never heard, but it feels familiar. Like a lullaby you once knew in another life. Just when your eyes start to close, they open the far door. The queen's private chamber lies ahead. Time to meet the moon. The air changes the moment you cross the threshold. Cooler, softer, like fabric pulled taut between worlds. You step from the anointing chamber into the queen's private quarters, where every surface glows with a quiet elegance. No gold, no jewels. No ostentation. This is where splendor folds in on itself and becomes serenity. The room is round, echoing the shape of the palace's solar calendar and lit only by a constellation of oil lamps. Their flames flicker inside, carved niches along the wall, throwing moving shadows across embroidered tapestries and ivory-inlaid furniture. The scent of honey and sandalwood trails behind you, interweaving with fresh myrrh, smoldering in a corner burner. This is where the queen rests after her bath, after her oils, after the careful rebuilding of her body and spirit. You sink down onto a cushioned bench covered in goat hair linen, and for a moment you feel as though you've entered the mind of someone who never has to rush. Everything in this room is designed to slow you down. Even the silence is plush. But there's always a ritual, even in rest. A young attendant, older than the others and clearly more senior, approaches with a carved box made of dark acacia wood. She opens it slowly, revealing the queen's personal scent scrolls. Yes, scent scrolls. Strips of cloth rolled and stored with dried herbs and pressed flower petals. Each one is designed to evoke a particular emotion or state of mind. You're invited to choose one. You reach into the box and pull out a scroll laced with pale lavender threads. You can already smell it lemon balm vetiver and just a hint of camphor. The scroll is unrolled and passed beneath your nose 3 times in silence. This is how the queen centers herself, not with noise, but with breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The night settles deeper into your bones. Now the conversation begins. Not loud, not demanding, just soft voices between attendants. Sometimes directed at you. Questions asked not to interrogate, but to reflect. Where did your thoughts drift today? One asks, placing a warm stone into your palm. Did you see the white owl above the gardens? Another whispers, settling beside you with a bowl of mulled fig wine. This isn't idle chatter. It's a vital part of the queen's routine. Evening dialogue is believed to release mental burdens. Queens of the 9th century were known to engage in this gentle, ritualistic word-letting. Much like monks practiced in Ethiopia's highlands, stories were traded like silk, folded carefully, given freely, never forced. You learn something. Unexpected. The queen collects dreams. Attendants record them for hers and others. Each morning, scribes read dream accounts as part of her divinatory council. Some are prophetic, others poetic. Some make no sense at all, but even nonsense has value. The dream of the yellow lion with a fishtail is famously recorded in royal archives, believed to predict a record harvest. Historians still argue whether these dreams influenced policy or were simply the Queen's private entertainment. But evidence suggests they played a role in diplomatic timing. Tonight, you're asked about your dreams. You pause, surprised at the question's weight. It's a practice you never imagined could be so tender, so royal. Even nightmares belong to the Queen. The eldest attendant says, collecting your answer like a rare gem. From a nearby shelf, a large clay vessel is brought out at surface, painted with spiraling script. It's the Queen's dream urn. Every dream is written on a folded parchment and placed inside. Some are burned during full moons, others saved for decades. You're allowed to write yours down and add it to the urn. The pen they give you is made from hollowed reed and soot ink. You don't rush, the Queen will read it tomorrow as the room darkens further. You notice a stretch of stone floor inlaid with obsidian chips. At first glance, it's decorative. But as more oil lamps are dimmed, the story unfolds. The chips reflect light like a slow-moving river, and that's exactly what they're meant to be, the river of time. The Queen walks across this path barefoot each night, from one end of the room to the other, in silent meditation. Each step is a prayer, a memory, a reminder that she is both carried by time and carrying it forward. You're asked to do the same. You remove your shoes and place one foot on the cool obsidian. It's startling, but then the rhythm takes over. One foot, then the other. Slowly, the light dances beneath you. You don't count steps. The path is curved, looping in a quiet arc back toward the anointing door. You reach the end. And the eldest attendant smiles as if you've passed a secret test. She places a soft hand on your shoulder. Now you are seen. Warmth blooms in your chest, not from the oils or the wine, but from something deeper. The feeling of being gently known. It's not as ruler or guest or observer, but as one more soul. In the Queen's orbit, trusted to walk the same path. And then, just when you think the night is over, a bell rings soft, low, and hollow. It means the Queen has returned from her bath. She arrives like a sigh in the darkness, soft, inevitable, unannounced. No fanfare, no trumpets, no choreographed procession of bowing courtiers. Just the Queen of 9th century Ethiopia, wrapped in fresh linens, her feet bare against the obsidian. Inlay you walked only moments ago. She glides past you, her eyes lowered in thought, hair still damp from her bath. It glistens like the surface of a moonlit lake, braided back with sprigs of wild basil, the leaves still holding their dew. Don't dare speak. Not because you're afraid, but because her presence feels like it demands stillness, and maybe reverence. It's a quiet kind of authority, one built not on volume, but on gravity. She lowers herself onto a wide platform scattered with cushions, goatskin mats, and a single fur throw dyed with indigo. This is the listening circle. It's not a throne, but it holds more weight than one. Only those who've completed the evening rituals may sit here. And tonight, that includes you. The attendants gather like stars orbiting her moonlight. They bring not gifts, but presence. Their voices soften further, and no one speaks unless spoken to. The Queen finally raises her head and her eyes, dark as a storm, but clear as morning. Sweep the room, you are, acknowledged, with the barest tilt of her head, and that's when the ritual of the night accounts begins. This practice isn't about numbers or gold. No ledgers or scrolls are unrolled. The Queen receives her evening through the words of others. Each attendant steps forward, one at a time, and offers a brief recounting of something they saw or learned that day. A child laughing in the market, a cloud shaped like a flamingo, the way the wind twisted the smoke from a cooking fire. Mundane, maybe to us, but to her it is vital intelligence. Queens were believed to rule not just through power, but through awareness. This tradition, preserved in fragments by 13th century Ethiopian texts, suggests the Queen practiced a kind of sensory diplomacy, collecting the city's moods like rain in a basin. Your turn comes, You clear your throat and mention the scent. Scroll, the way it made you feel. The queen does not smile, but there's a flicker in her gaze approval, perhaps or maybe just a mental note. Whatever it is, it matters. You've contributed. You've joined the pulse. After the final account. A large polished bowl is passed around, filled not with food, but with clean pebbles. Each person chooses one. You select a smooth gray stone, warm from its time in the bowl. This is the night talion, ancient meditative practice, where the queen's inner circle places their pebble in one of three vessels before leaving. Joy, grief, or mystery. It sounds simple, but the act carries weight. Historians still argue whether these nightly tallies influenced the queen's decisions or were just symbolic, but many believe patterns were tracked, weeks compared. If grief filled too often, the queen would summon counselors. If mystery overflowed, oracles were consulted. You drop your stone in mystery. No one questions it. No one asks why. That's the rule. The vessel speaks, not the voice. Once. The final pebble clinks into its urn. The queen gestures gently, and the room shifts again. This time, into silence. Not absence of sound, but its redirection. No talking now. This is the hour of stillness. It's said that during this hour, the queen listens for what has not been said. She sits perfectly still, eyes closed, one hand resting on the shoulder of the youngest attendant beside her. Everyone mirrors her posture. No movement, just breath, just space. Just night folding in on itself. You try to keep still, but your mind is anything but quiet. Thoughts bubble up. The feel of obsidian beneath your feet. The dream scroll, the scent of her oils, the slow motion of that feathered breeze. The queen. Is she asleep? No. Her breath is steady, purposeful, but deep. She is dreaming with her eyes open. A single candle is lit, placed before her. Its flame dances alone, no other light sources competing. And then, without words, the queen lifts one hand and begins to trace a circle in the air. It's hypnotic, slow spiral, outward, inward. The candle flickers as if obeying her rhythm, according to fragmented oral traditions. This movement isn't arbitrary. It's part of a symbolic gesture system lost to modern historians, thought to be linked with lunar cycles and ancestral memory. Scholars still debate whether it had practical meaning codes, prayers, or whether it was purely personal. To you, it feels like both. She finishes the spiral and extinguishes the candle with a single breath, and just like that, the hour ends. Movement resumes. Quiet steps, folding cushions, a few shared looks between attendants. You can feel the shift, not quite goodbye, but transition. This is how her night closes. Before anyone leaves, the queen reaches into a carved wooden dish beside her and pulls out a slip of parchment folded twice, sealed with honey wax. She places it beside the candle base and nods toward you. It's for you. You're told to read it later. Alone, once you're out of the palace and washed clean of moonlight. It's a night leaf, a tradition only the queen may give. Sometimes it's a poem. Sometimes just a question. You accept it with both hands. Bow your head slightly. The queen closes her eyes again. She won't open them until every guest has left the room. And so you rise. Step back over the obsidian path, past the dream. Past the tapestries that no longer shimmer but sleep, out into the corridor, where the air feels heavier now, full, like you've borrowed a fragment of someone else's legend, and maybe you have. The queen's chamber fades behind you like a dream dissipating at dawn. You're back in the quieter halls of the inner palace walls of woven reed and lacquered wood. Lanterns guttering low with the last of their oil, still clutching the folded night leaf. You find yourself drawn to a side passage, not the way you came, not the one your attendant pointed toward. This path feels older, less polished. A hallway not meant for ceremony, but memory. The floors here are of compacted earth, worn smooth by centuries of bare feet. The air smells of dust and dried lemon, leaves. You walk slowly. Every step feels like a question. Eventually, the corridor opens into a small circular room, no bigger than a stable stall. The walls are covered in tiny mark-sketch symbols in spiral formations. Stars, eyes, waves. One appears to be a bird with human hands. Another, a fish wearing a crown. You realize you're not alone. An elder is seated on a mat in the center, legs folded beneath her, her hands tracing patterns in a bowl of ash. She does not look up. She does not speak, but she gestures to a low bench opposite her. You sit. Silence stretches. You can hear the night beyond the palace now drums from a distant village, the cry of a lone hyena echoing in the hills, wind rustling the tall grass. The elder finally speaks. Her voice is weathered silk. What did you place your stone in? Hesitate. You weren't expecting this question, but you answer honestly. Mystery. The elder nods once. Then, she reaches into a clay vessel beside her and removes a thin sliver of wood, twisted pale, almost bone-like. She sets it on the ash, presses it down gently. The ash shifts. You stare as the shape transforms into a symbol you somehow recognize, though you've never seen it before. Seed, or maybe a question mark. Or maybe both. Good, she says. That's the vessel she watches most closely.
No.
You're unsure if she refers to the queen or something more abstract, fate, perhaps, or the spirit of the kingdom itself.
Oh.
But you don't ask. You sense that words are too loud for this space. The elder reaches for your hand, presses something into it. It's not a talisman, not a jewel, just a pinch of fine ash and a reed sliver tools, not trophies. When your mystery deepens, she whispers, "Burn this. And remember, tonight wasn't just a visit. It was an invitation." The words settle into your bones like warmth after rain. You nod, rise slowly, and bound, from obligation, but gratitude. Then you make your way back into the corridor. This time, you follow the path lit by woven lamps, returning to your guest quarters, where a shallow basin waits with lavender water and a folded tunic the color of dusk. You sit by the open window. The night leaf still unopened beside you. You feel it radiating potential, but you don't read it. Not yet. Instead, you stare out at the stars above Ethiopia, the same stars the queen watches after her guests have gone. The same stars mirrored in the ash spiral of the elder's bowl. And as you breathe in the heavy stillness of royal night, you realize you didn't just witness history tonight. You entered it, and perhaps it entered you. End of immersive episode. Boring history for sleep. What queens dreamed of in 9th century Ethiopia, 2 hours. Would you like another 2-hour immersive script set in a different time and place? The breeze drifting through your window is cool and smells faintly of sandalwood smoke, of distant charcoal fires settling into their embers. You don't remember laying down, but now you are reclining on a cushioned mat, limbs humming with the weight of silence and ritual. Somewhere in the corridors, footsteps pass, a soft patter of bare soles, deliberate and unhurried. It's nearly midnight now, the realm of quiet routines that no longer belong to guests or courtiers, but to the inner rhythm of the palace itself. This is the hour of queens alone. You sit up slowly. Your reed tunic rustles like dry paper. Jug of tamarind water waits beside your mat. You sip and realize it's subtly spice, ginger, clove, and a single slice of lemon, floating like a miniature sun. Then there's a knock. Not a knock. Exactly more a tap, like a knuckle brushing. Wood from memory? You open the door. No one stands there, but at your feet is a small wooden tray. On it, a folded cloth, a smooth river stone, and a strip of barks, farmed and curled at the edges like parchment.
Right.
You pick it up. It's inscribed, not in GS script, nor any alphabet, you know. The lines twist and dance like vines. You run your fingers over them, and they shimmer faintly under the moonlight. A voice familiar now speaks from the shadowed corner of the room. Would you like to know what a queen dreams before dawn? You don't answer aloud, but you nod. Shadow resolves into the queen's attendant, the same one who met you earlier. She gestures for you to follow, and again you're walking the palace in twilight. This time, you're not led to the hammam or a hall. You're led to the roof. Ascent is winding. You climb a spiral stair hidden within the stone cool, to the touch, echoing with the chirps of tiny bats roosting somewhere above. At the top, a wide-open terrace with low benches, jars of incense, and a stunning view of the highlands sleeping. Under starlight here, the queen is alone, not in ceremonial robes. She's barefoot, draped in a thin cotton wrap, her silver anklets silent for once. She is looking at the stars through a clay disk pierced with holes, celestial map. She doesn't look at you, but she speaks. When my mother ruled, she said, dreams were a kind of bathing. You blink, she continues. You go under. You emerge changed, lighter, cleaner, but not always in the ways you expect. She lowers the star disk and hands it to you. You peer through. The holes align with constellations you recognize. A few you don't. There's the familiar Orion, except here he carries a staff, not a sword. There's the Pleiades, but arranged in a spiral, not a cluster. One pattern resembles the queen, her self-elongated neck, crown of curls, hands open as if releasing or catching something invisible. She speaks again. Tonight, I dreamed of rivers that moved backwards, of lions that whispered their praise name before striking, and of you. That last line drops into the still air like a pebble in a pond. You start to ask what she means, but she silences you with a gesture. You must dream for yourself now. She places something cold in your palm, a fragment of obsidian shaped, like an eye. And then she steps away into the shadows, vanishing into the rooftop mist. You're left alone, beneath a galaxy you no longer fully recognize. In your hand. The obsidian feels warm now, and you understand this too. It's a kind of bath, a plunge into mystery, a rinsing of the waking world. You curl up on one of the rooftop cushions, the stars watching you back. And the last thought before sleep claims you is not a question, but a memory you haven't made yet. The morning arrives not with trumpets or sun rays, but with scent. You stir beneath a soft wool blanket. Someone must have placed it over you in the night. There's the unmistakable aroma of cardamom, honeyed porridge, and something sharp perhaps. Crushed fenugreek or fresh turmeric root being shaved. You're no longer on the rooftop. Somehow, as if by magic or the sheer logistics of palace staff who specialize in dreamlike transitions, you've returned to a sleeping chamber. A chamber not yours, though. You realize this as you sit up. The walls are covered in hand-woven tapestries, depicting animals, some familiar, others oddly fantastical. A crocodile with wings, a camel with a mane like a lion, a cat balancing a scale. A door creaks open. The queen's attendant, always gliding rather than walking, enters with a polished wooden bowl. Steam rises in gentle threads. She says nothing, merely sets it before you and leaves. You lean over the bowl. Inside, thick golden porridge glistening with clarified butter, dotted with nuts and a swirl of something dark, likely date syrup. You take a bite. It's sweet, hot, with just enough texture from crushed lentils to remind you this isn't a peasant's meal, but an ancient culinary ritual. As you eat, you notice your hands still smell faintly of the incense from last night. That resinous sweetness has sunk into your skin, like memory itself. Once finished, you stand. Your knees wobble slightly, as if you've just disembarked from a boat. It's not unpleasant. You feel emptied out and refilled. A vessel rinsed with moonlight and dreams. Then comes the sound of rhythm, not drums, not flutes, but the steady knock-knock of two sticks being tapped together in slow cadence. You follow the sound through the corridors. The palace is now fully awake. Women sweep the courtyards with palm brooms. Gardeners water tall earthen pots that sprout fragrant blue flowers you don't recognize. Finally, you arrive at a circular room. Sunlight pours through a high oculus, catching motes of dust and making them dance like spirits. At the center, the queen. She sits on a low stool, hair damp, skin glistening as if freshly oiled. Around her are 4 attendants each, holding a different instrument. One carries a basket of herbs. Another holds a bone comb. A third, a tray of painted clays. The fourth, a pot of warm oil steeped in marula and myrrh. The queen nods at you, and then speaks not to you, but to the room. We continue. And so the post-bath beautification begins. This isn't a spa day. It's a coded language. Each motion means something. The herd basket is passed under her nose. She selects a few sprigs of cot, not to chew but to braid into her hair. The bone comb is used with reverence, as if each stroke restores an ancestral memory. Clay is daubed beneath her eyes not for color, but for cooling and sun protection. You watch in silence as her skin is massaged with circular strokes, pushing the oils deep into muscle and bone. At one point, she turns to you. Do you know why we do this? You shake your head, unsure whether you're allowed to speak. It's not about beauty. It's about remembering, she continues. Each morning, we prepare not for the day, but for our lineage. These oils, these herbs, they carry stories, and our bodies are the scrolls. You take this in. One attendant steps forward now with a long ivory tool-part comb, part wand. With this, she begins inscribing fine lines into the queen's damp hair. Tiny braids appear like calligraphy, each section more intricate than the last. This one, the queen says, pointing to a braid near her temple, is for the lioness who refused to kneel. And this one, she touches one behind her ear, is for the boy who painted his fears onto cave walls and never slept again. You realize each braid is a memory, a prayer, a story passed down through fingers and follicles. Historians still argue whether these grooming rituals were solely for status, or whether they had embedded meanings, codes of resistance, grief, even secret political messages. One scholar once suggested that the arrangement of braids indicated alliances between noble families, like a woven map of diplomacy. But the queen shrugs at such speculation. Some things aren't meant to be studied, only carried. And then the music begins. Low flutes, played from behind the room's curtain. The air thickens with melody, and the queen begins to hum along not words, just tone, a sound you feel in your ribs before you hear it in your ears. Stands now, robes newly draped, ankles shining with perfumed oil. She's ready not for court, but for remembrance. Before she leaves, she brushes your cheek with her thumb, leaves a faint trace of oil. You're not sure what it means, but your skin remembers. You follow the queen's footsteps, Bear. Sure. Never hurry, Dawes. She exits the circular room. The palace pulses with a quiet momentum now. Morning rituals have softened into midday duties. You feel neither hungry nor tired, just lucid. As if you finally adjusted to the dream logic of the 9th century, you pass under an arch of carved sandstone. Its edges are warm to the touch, and for a moment you rest your palm there. The sun has kissed this stone for over 1,000 years. You're sure of it. Ahead, the queen moves toward a garden. It's not a public one, but tucked behind thick hedges and stone walls. A garden where the air changes, quieter, almost reverent. This is the Garden of the Mothers. You learn this from an older woman seated on a stool near the entrance, grinding something with a pestle that smells sharply of roots. She doesn't look at you as she speaks. No sandals past this point. This place remembers feet. You slip your sandals off. Inside. The soil is dark and alive. Fragrant. The garden blooms not with ornamental beauty, but with functional life. Here grow the sacred plants of the royal women, some used in baths, others in medicine, and many in ceremonies that no one outside the court is ever meant to see. You recognize a few: aloe with its fat, spiked arms, frankincense shrubs with pale bark that bleeds perfume when cut, and Encephalion called the false banana, though it provides more sustenance than its cousin ever could. A young girl is harvesting leaves using a curved blade. She sees you watching and whispers, "This one we crush into paste. It cools the belly during hot moons." Another woman, face wrinkled like old linen, is tying bundles of dried herbs with reed twine. She glances at you. "When a queen gives birth, we boil this one." Makes the pain polite. You're not sure whether to smile or wince. In the center of the garden is a circular stone basin. It's dry but lined with ancient residue, white chalky rings, and a dark moss at the bottom. A ceremonial bath, a water mirror. You're tempted to ask, but then the queen approaches. The garden stills. She walks barefoot across the soil, every step careful and deliberate. The garden responds, not literally, but it feels that way. Even the birds go quiet. She kneels by a lavender bush. cups its tiny purple blossoms, and inhales deeply. "My mother bled in this garden," she says softly. "Before I was born," you blink, unsure whether that's a metaphor. She doesn't clarify. Instead, she gestures for you to sit beside her. You do. The soil is warm beneath your hands. "Each queen before me has walked this garden after bathing," she explains. "It's how we remember who we are, before the mirrors and perfumes." You wonder how much of this is spiritual and how much is strategic. Queens, especially Ethiopian ones, have always known how to wield symbolism like a blade. This garden, this ritual, this barefoot reconnection with Earth, it grounds them. Literally, historians debate whether these post-bathing garden visits were daily affairs or reserved for feast days, fertility rites, or times of grief. Some argue that the plants themselves were curated to reflect emotional states, bitter herbs during mourning, flowering vines for celebration, roots for introspection. Others dismiss that as modern romanticism. But as the queen walks the garden's circular path, touching each plant in turn, you sense something older than interpretation. This is beyond metaphor. She stops at a small tree whose bark is stripped in spiral patterns. "My grandmother planted this, and her husband was taken by fever." You look closely. The tree is bandaged with strips of dyed cloth green, blue, and one fading crimson. Prayer? Offerings? Grief markers? Who knows? The queen tears a small leaf from the tree and hands it to you, Chu. You hesitate. She smiles. "If it kills you, I'll honor you in song." You chew. The leaf is bitter, then cooling. Your tongue tingles, and for a second you're convinced your teeth are glowing. Then the feeling fades, replaced by a calm that settles deep in your spine. "That's how we silence the noise," she says. You look around. The women continue their tasks, barely glancing at the queen. This isn't about display. It's an act of maintenance, of keeping alive what textbooks can't preserve. A butterfly lands on the queen's shoulder. She doesn't brush it off. "The bath cleans the body," she says. But the garden reminds the body it belongs to something. You sit in silence together. You feel your breath slow, sinking with the wind as it moves through tall stalks and fragrant shrubs. You wonder if you've ever been this still in your own time. Then, without warning, a gong. Sounds low, resonant. Metallic, the queen rises. "Time to be seen," she says, brushing soil from her palms. "Come," she doesn't look back. Rise too, your feet stained by ancient soil, your mouth still tasting the memory of a leaf chewed by queens long buried. You leave the garden the way you entered, barefoot, quieter now. The queen strides ahead, her gait fluid, her robe fluttering just enough to catch the breeze, but not enough to be called dramatic. You, meanwhile, still have soil on your ankles, and the sharp, medicinal taste of that mystery leaf lingering on your tongue. It's oddly comforting. The gong echoes again, a second chime, deeper this time. You follow its pull through narrow passageways, past alcoves where attendants tidy flour, bowls where small children balance baskets of papyrus and scrolls. These are not corridors meant for royalty, more like arteries of the palace's nervous system, hidden, functional, essential, and then light. You emerge into a long courtyard ringed by columns and open to the sky. The sun strikes the polished stone beneath your feet so brightly you squint. In the center of this sunlit void stands a single raised platform, a stage, a pulpit, or a throne base. You can't tell. But what's clear is this. Whatever's about to happen is ceremonial. The queen approaches it slowly, pausing only to allow a trio of attendants to adjust her robe, aim a golden clasp to her shoulder, and anoint her forehead with a thin line of scented oil. The oil glistens, catching the light like a blade's edge. She steps onto the platform and the hum begins, low and rhythmic. A dozen women seated around the perimeter of the courtyard begin to chant. No instruments, just voice. Not loud enough to disturb sleep, but not soft enough to ignore. You're not sure if it's a song of praise or of mourning. It feels like both. This is the ritual of public return. Historians still argue over its purpose. Was it a post-bath appearance to reaffirm the queen's divine presence? a subtle form of political theater, reinforcing her cleanliness as a metaphor for moral clarity, or simply tradition, layered over generations until no one dared skip it? No one knows for sure, but right now it feels undeniable. You watch her. Stand still orderly, still as two women walk in concentric circles around the platform carrying bowls of smoke. The scent is dense and sticky, like burnt myrrh and something sharper, maybe resin or dried citrus peel. The wind tugs at it gently. Curling smoke trails into the open sky. And here's the curious part. No one speaks her name. In fact, the Queen says nothing. She doesn't wave, doesn't address the small group gathered in the shadows beyond the courtyard. You spot a few elderly men with styluses, younger women with scrolls, what might be an ambassador or two, judging by their differently woven garments. They watch. She stands, and the chant continues. It's not about performance. It's about presence. She's present, therefore the nation still turns. Her cleanliness is not personal, it's political. Her stillness is not silence, it's dominance. Her bath was not private, it was foundational. You feel goosebumps despite the sun. A fringe scholar once suggested this ritual may have originated not with queens, but with priestesses, women who bathed before entering the Holy of Holies, who stood before the people not as rulers but as vessels. Over time, as political power shifted, queens inherited the rite. But the bones of its choreography, its silence remained untouched. The queen descends the platform slowly. One step, then another. The chant fades. As she walks, people bow not. Deeply, not theatrically, just enough to mark her passage. A hand over the heart, a tilt of the head. These are gestures you've never practiced, but your body imitates them naturally, as if remembering a story told in sleep. You glance sideways and notice something odd. A young boy, maybe 7 or 8, scurries across the far edge of the courtyard, dragging a string of tiny bells. No one stops him. In fact, several people smile. He circles the entire courtyard once, then vanishes through a side arch. Was that part of the ritual? The queen seems amused. We let them ring the courtyard once a year, she murmurs to no one in particular. It keeps the gods awake. You file that under quirky fringe tidbits. She leads you now into a covered hallway where fabric panels billow between wooden beams. The heat recedes here, replaced by cooler air scented with sandalwood and rosewater. The hush feels sacred. Even your footsteps dare not echo. And then you hear it dash laughter soft. It's melodic, unmistakably informal. You follow the queen into a low-ceilinged chamber where a group of women, her cousins, perhaps, her trusted companions, are lounging on cushions, sipping from carved wooden cups. They greet her not with bowed heads, but with smirks and sideways glances. You didn't fall asleep on the platform this time, one says. The smoke was less aggressive today, the queen replies, accepting a cup. This is the re-entry phase, the private cool-down after the public ritual. An unrecorded moment where the performance ends and the human returns. No scrolls mention this, but you suspect it's the most vital part. You're handed a cup as well. The drink is sweet and thick, made from fermented honey, ginger, and crushed fruit skins. Tingles behind your teeth. Someone's pet monkey, because of course someone has a pet monkey, tumbles down from a rafter, lands neatly on a lap, and promptly steals a fig. No one reacts. A woman leans toward you. If you're still here by moonrise, she whispers, you'll see the queen dance. But only if the garden has forgiven her. You try to decipher what that even means, but then the queen chuckles. Don't mind her. She's been kissed by too many herbs. Laughter again. Warm, unguarded, real. This is not a moment meant for historians. But somehow, it's the one you'll remember most. The warmth of honeyed wine lingers in your chest as you recline carefully on a woven cushion. The queen has slipped off her sandals, revealing feet dusted with fine gold powder. Subtle gesture, perhaps, or just comfort. No one comments. Outside, the chamber, life continues. The sound of distant birds. A market vendor shouting something about apricots, and the occasional laughter of children tumbling after a hoop. Inside, the rhythm slows to a hush that feels ancient. One of the queen's companions rises. She wears a tunic the color of dusk and carries a reed harp. Without ceremony, she begins to pluck a tune low and lilting, a lullaby for grown women. In court scribes, it loops like the Nile itself, meandering, circling back on itself, never hurried. The queen listens, eyes half-lidded. You feel yourself breathing in time with the melody. Not because it's expected, but because it's easy. Natural, a servant enters with a small rectangular tray. On it, an ink block, a shallow bowl of water, and a single brush with a handle of carved bone. The queen dips the brush in the water, then rubs it across the inkstone in slow circles. She doesn't write anything, just watches the ink bloom. Sometimes, I make words, she says. Other times, I just let them stay silent. It sounds like a riddle. You glance at her companions. None seem surprised. One of them, an older woman with silver in her braids, offers an explanation. She writes poems for the moon, then burns them before dawn. Almost ask why, almost. But that would break the spell. Instead, you watch as the queen traces a single line onto a small scrap of linen. She holds it up to the light, reads it once, then drops it into a clay bowl, already half filled with ash. It catches quickly, curling like a dry leaf. No one claps. No one speaks. This is how a kingdom rests. In the corners of the chamber, small braziers, warm-scented resin's amber, pine, something sharp like lemongrass. Sleep creeps closer. Not the collapse-in-two-bed kind, but the delicious, in-between kind, where dreams begin to press against the edges of your thoughts like polite visitors. One of the women curls up beside the monkey. Another yawns and slides deeper into the pillows. The queen stands. She offers you a hand. You should see the roof garden, she says. It blooms better in moonlight. You risen steady, but obedient to beauty, and follow her once more. The queen leads you through a narrow corridor, lit only by oil lamps set in alcoves. Their flames flicker in rhythm with your footsteps, casting long, thin shadows that sway along the walls like reed dancers. The floor beneath you is cool stone, inlaid with a mosaic of lilies and ibises. You're too sleepy to follow the full pattern, but your feet somehow avoid the sharp corners like your body remembers where to step, even if your mind drifts. At the end of the hallway, a heavy wooden door carved with concentric spirals opens with no sound. A servant must have oiled the hinges just this morning. The queen doesn't pause. She pushes it open with her palm and steps into the night air. You're now in the roof garden, and it is not what you expected. For one thing, no room ever could be. Vines with white blossoms trail from woven trellises. Clay pots overflow with basil, frankincense, and flowering ginger. Somewhere a toad croaks lazily, its deep voice echoing against the courtyard walls. There's a soft hum in the air, not from insects, but from the breeze itself. The queen sighs contentedly. Better than politics, she mutters. She sits on a curved bench made of pink granite. A young woman, perhaps her niece, or a well-favored servant, appears without a word and places a silk shawl over the queen's shoulders. Then she vanishes into the shadows like a bird folding into a tree. You join her on the bench. From here, the city below stretches wide, winding alleys, peaked rooftops, the occasional glint of torchlight. In the far distance, you think you see the faint glow of fireflies, or perhaps it's just lanterns swaying in someone's distant courtyard. The queen points upward. See that one? She says, indicating a star that blinks stubbornly near the horizon. We call it the returning. Brother, you squint. It doesn't look special. Just another dot in a velvet sky. When it vanishes, she continues, our rains end. When it returns, the river swells. Some say it brings the souls of those who left and never came back. You glance at her. Is that true? She smiles, but doesn't answer. This is a woman who keeps truths the way a lion keeps secrets, not hidden. Exactly, but surrounded by silence that no one dares to cross. A small table has been placed beside the bench. On it, a bowl of dried figs, a clay jug of something warm and spiced, and a stack of folded cloths that you realize are hand-stitched napkins, each with different little symbols sewn in on ink. A bird, a river fish. She picks up a fig and offers you one. Eat slowly, she says. The fruit worked hard to become this sweet. You bite. It is rich and sticky and tastes vaguely of smoke. Not unpleasant, just old. There's a lull in conversation. Not awkward, just restful. Behind you, someone begins to hum. It's one of the harpists again, perhaps the same from earlier. The tune is familiar now. The queen leans her head back and closes her eyes. You mirror her, and for a few moments, the stars seem to move. Historians still argue whether roof gardens were truly common in 9th century Ethiopian palaces, or whether the surviving descriptions were symbolic, meant to reflect inner peace more than architectural fact. But sitting here, wrapped in floral air and moonlight, you find it hard to imagine this place as anything other than real. A breeze lifts the queen's shawl. You notice now it's embroidered with tiny sun's etch, one different, as if sewn by someone who had never seen the same dawn twice. Tell me something, she says softly. You wait. If you could plant just one thing and know it would thrive, what would it be? You'd think about it. Not deeply, just enough. A mango tree, you say. She smiles. A tree is a good answer. Trees outlive mistakes. She leans against the armrest, eyes still on the returning brother, and so you both sit, breathing in the stillness, watching the star move so slowly, you're not even sure it's moving at all. You're not sure how long you remain in the rooftop garden. 10 minutes? An hour? Time doesn't behave here the way it usually does. It stretches and curls like incense smoke, drifting wherever the night breeze wants it to go. The queen finally rises, the soft rustle of her gown stirring you from your half-dream. She doesn't speak. She simply glides back toward the hallway, trusting you'll follow, and you do. Downstairs again, the palace is even quieter than before. The candles have burned lower, their pools of wax widening like melted stars. Somewhere behind a thick curtain, someone snores. A soft, rhythmic sound. You pass it like a stream on a night walk. Then she stops. Before you, doorway you hadn't noticed opens onto a long chamber tiled entirely in pale blue. The walls shimmer with a thin sheen of water-like condensation or tears left behind by the room itself. You're struck by the scent, not perfume this time, but clean stone and something like fresh-cut aloe. The steam room. This is the second-to-last part of her bathing ritual. By now, you're basically a seasoned courtier/shadow. So you enter without hesitation. Inside, mist hangs thick and low, swirling at knee height and blurring the outlines of things. A stone bench lines one wall, its surface covered with tiny squares of folded cotton. The queen sinks onto it gracefully, her posture somewhere between royal composure and exhausted ant. A servant appears seriously. Where are they hiding when they're not materializing? And begins to ladle water over hot stones set in a bronze basin. A hiss, a cloud of scented steam. And suddenly the room breathes. This, she tells you, is where the stories live, apparently. Court ladies gather here under pretense of clearing pores and unclogging sinuses. But what really happens is gossip, poetry, and the kind of confessions that don't quite belong anywhere else. No scribes, no judges, just heat and sweat and truth. You ask if men are ever allowed in. She cocks an eyebrow. Only when we want something fixed. She gestures for you to take one of the folded cloths. You do. It's still warm from the bench. You sit beside her, letting the steam coax open the stubborn tension in your neck. Do you ever get tired of it, you ask? The court, the rituals, the performance of it all? She exhales, and it sounds heavier than her usual sigh. It's like braiding your hair, she says. Tiring, repetitive. But if you stop, everything comes undone. Historians still debate whether Ethiopian queens had their own private steam chambers or shared communal ones with noblewomen. Some point to fragments of architectural remains suggesting private quarters with built-in thermal plumbing. Others argue these are misinterpretations of bathhouse ruins. But here now none of that matters. You are in the steam, you hear the rumor. Oh, the debate is just background noise. A faint lullaby echoes from the corridor. Probably another child being rocked to sleep by some palace nurse. It's a tune you've heard twice already tonight, and it's beginning to embed itself in your brain like a chorus. You didn't ask for it, but now, low-key, love. The queen chuckles as a drop of sweat rolls off her chin. This is where we say the things we regret later, she says. But also the things we remember longest. You nod, unsure if she means to say something in particular or if that was the thing. Another servant, different this time, younger, emerges with 2 small cups of warm barley water, spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg. You sip yours slowly, the flavors grounding you after all that rooftop stargazing. There's a moment when the steam swirls just right, and through the haze you catch the queen looking at you not as a monarch sizing up a visitor, but as a woman. Remembering something long lost? Do you know the name of the last queen who sat here? You shake your head. She smiles. Neither do I. That's how we live longer. You don't know if she means forgetting or being forgotten. You're too warm to care. A drop of water plinks onto the stone near your foot. Then another, somewhere. Above, the roof begins to groan. The queen lifts her chin. Ah, it's time, she says. Time for what? You want to ask, but she's already standing. The air has thickened, not just from steam now, but from rangent. At first then, more insistent. It's like the sky itself is exhaling. She wraps her shawl tightly around her and leaves without. A backward glance. You follow her again, because that's what you do now. You trail the queen through a hallway that's different this time. Quieter, darker, more cavernous. The rain outside has picked up a soft drumming against the stone walls and shuttered windows. It echoes faintly, like a rhythm you recognize, but can't quite name. You round a final bend and emerge onto a small, open courtyard. And just like that, you're back beneath the sky, again, except this time, it's crying. The queen steps out into the courtyard barefoot, her white wrap quickly soaked through. Clinging to her with that strange combination of grace and absolute indifference, you hesitate at the threshold. Unsure if this part of the ritual requires dignity or daring, she glances back, says nothing, and holds out a hand. You take it. And step forward. The rain is warm, not cool like you'd expected. Doesn't slap or sting it, pats you gently, like the hand of an old friend. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays. You don't see the musician. You don't need to. The music isn't for your ears, it's for the night itself. This is the rain cleansing, the final stage. For 9th century Ethiopian queens, it was common though. Rarely documented, for the final rinse after steaming to be done outdoors using natural rainfall whenever possible. Royal engineers were even said 2-time ceremonial baths around seasonal storms. Historians still argue whether this practice had religious undertones or simply the most luxurious use of precipitation ever devised. You stand there in the middle of the courtyard, beside this quietly powerful woman who just let the rain wash away the sweat, the oil, the weight of the entire day. And you do the same. Your pulse slows. You breathe in, and everything smells like crushed herbs and wet earth. This is not a dramatic moment. No trumpets, no whispered secrets, no climactic twist. It's just water. But also it's just water. And somehow, that's everything. The queen kneels briefly at a small stone basin in the center of the courtyard. From within it, a few floating blue flowers bob gently. She touches one, then cups a handful of the rainwater pooling at the edge, rubbing it along her forearms. You mirror her, not out of obligation now, but instinct. Another servant appears, with dry cloths, which you use to pat your face and neck. No rubbing. That's forbidden. Here it bruises the calm. The queen laughs softly when she sees you blotting your cheeks like you've done this 100 times. Careful, she murmurs. You're starting to belong. You pretend to scoff, but deep down, you don't mind. The wind picks up, and the rain tapers off like a song winding to its last refrain. Clouds drift, revealing slivers of moonlight. Everything around you gleams as though someone polished the world while you weren't looking. Back inside, someone has laid out thin robes made of tightly woven cotton, bleached bone white. You slip into one. It smells like soap and sunlight. Queen reappears in her own robe, her hair damp but rewrapped neatly, her movements slower now. And you can't tell if it was weight or armor. You walk with her through the palace again, past rooms now silent, past candles flickering low. The place feels like it's exurling. Someone is grinding spices with a stone pestle. The scent of clove and coriander fills the air. You pause. A midnight stew? No, she replies, a morning one. But it takes hours. We like to begin before we sleep. That sounds like something out of a motivational poster. But somehow it fits. You pass a narrow hallway lined with tapestries, each one showing scenes of queens bathing, queens crowned, queens holding scrolls or wielding spears. One has a lion curled at her feet, another a falcon perched on her shoulder. None of them smile. You glance at your queen. She doesn't either. We're not made to be remembered for our joy, she says. Not bitter, just factual. Only for what we carry. You don't know what to say, so you don't say anything. Instead, you walk beside her to her sleeping chamber. It's smaller than you'd imagined. Simpler, too. The walls are lined with books, bundles of reeds, carved boxes, stacked neatly. A bowl of dried fig slices rests on a low wooden table. A rolled mat waits by the bed. Your spot, apparently. She sits on the bed but doesn't lie down yet. She's looking at a tiny bronze mirror, tilting it to catch the moonlight. You glimpse her reflection in yours. You'll be gone by morning, she says. I will. That's how these dreams work. So you sit there, damp-haired and soft-robed, unsure whether you're still dreaming or just fully finally awake in a different century. The queen places the mirror down and stretches back on the bed. Her breathing slows. Good night, she whispers. Nen, don't forget the steam room. That's where the real history is. You lie back on the mat. Your bones hum. The ceiling above you blurs. Outside, the last drops of rain tick against the window frame like tiny footsteps walking away. You blink awake, or maybe you never slept. Either way, the room is darker now. Quieter. The queen has gone her bed, still faintly warm. The scent of herbs and rose water still lingering in the air like the ghost of a lullaby. You sit up slowly, expecting perhaps to be whisked back to your own time to find the illusion broken, but no, your robe still clings slightly to your damp skin. Your mat still carries the faint texture of tightly wound reeds, and a low rhythmic sound hums from the corridor. It's not music, it's not footsteps. It's chanting. You rise and move toward the sound, drawn like steam to cool air. The hallway seems longer this time, flickering with fewer lamps, as if even the fire needs to rest. You pass a window where mist creeps across the sill. Beyond it, the palace grounds lie hushed, like they're holding their breath. You follow the sound. Eventually, it leads you to a chamber carved into the stone foundations. There's no door, just a heavy velvet curtain. You part it gently and step inside and stop. Inside, a circle of women sit cross-legged on the stone floor, their robes loose, their hair undone. Some are older ones so wrinkled she looks carved from bark, others are barely older than girls. In the center of their circle is a shallow bowl of water reflecting candlelight. The chanting rises and falls like the swell of a tide. They don't look at you. They don't need to. Somehow, they knew you were coming. You sit at the edge of the circle. This is the Bathhouse Council, not an official title. Of course, but it's what later oral traditions would come to call them. A group of women, mostly nobility, some servants, some scholars who gathered regularly, not just for hygiene, but for strategy. In a world where formal power rested in the hands of kings and priests, queens carved out influence in the steam and shadow. Here, in the quiet hours of night, decisions were whispered about land disputes, grain shortages, and marriages that could shift dynasties. Historians still argue whether this council held any official sway, or if their influence was more subtle steering. Kings threw pillow talk and favors owed. One woman dips her fingers into the water, bowl and draws a spiral on the stone floor. Another finishes a phrase in Giaz, then smiles softly. You catch a few recognizable words: boundary, storm, sisterhood. A clay pitcher makes its way around the circle. You take a sip when it reaches you. It's honey wine, barely sweet, with a sharp medicinal tempz. Your throat warms, your spine straightens. Then the conversation shifts. They're talking about ritual salts, about a new blend brought in from the lowlands, scented with frankincense and wild mint. One woman claims it causes prophetic dreams. Another scoffs, saying it just makes her sneeze. The old woman with bark-like skin chuckles. Her teeth are surprisingly white. You relax? This is not a council of intrigue and daggers, it's something deeper. A communion of women who bathe together, argue about herbs, and keep the kingdom from unraveling thread by thread. There's something almost conspiratorial about their calm. Like they're in on a secret the rest of the world is too loud to hear. The youngest of them reaches into a pouch and scatters dried petals onto the floor. Another traces a symbol onto her own wrist to interlocked crescents, a sign associated with water deities from the southern provinces. You remember seeing that same mark on the queen's ankle earlier? A tattoo? Or just a painted ritual symbol? It's almost ask. But then someone speaks your name. You didn't know they knew it. The old woman gestures for you to come forward. She doesn't rise her back, seems fused to the air around her, but her presence pulls you like gravity. You kneel beside her, unsure what to do with your hands. She places a small carved stone in your palm. It's cool and smooth, etched with a fish and a star. You recognize the fish-an old fertility symbol, but the star feels more personal. The queen had mentioned stars earlier. You wonder if this is part of the same constellation? Take it, the old woman says. You nod. What it's for. You just close your hand around it and feel the coolness slip into your bloodstream like ink into water. The chanting resumes, but softer now. You're allowed to stay, it seems. Not as a guest anymore, but as a temporary ghost, a drifting presence. Wrapped in borrowed robes and warmed by borrowed wine, you lean back against the wall, the stone surprisingly smooth. One woman begins humming a lullaby in a language you've never heard. Another lights a small cone of resin on a ceramic plate. The scent of myrrh fills the room. You watch the smoke curl upward, dancing toward the ceiling. It flickers and folds and seams for one brief second, to take the shape of a bird, then it's gone. You stay there until your eyes grow heavy, your fingers still closed around the carved stone. The queen doesn't return, but somehow her presence lingers like the aftertaste of something deeply sweet and slightly dangerous. You don't ask what comes next. You just breathe. You wake to the scent of damp earth and eucalyptus. The council room is empty now, the candles burn down to waxy puddles. Someone has draped a wool shawl over your shoulders during the night, and you're still clutching the carved stone in your hand like a talisman. Maybe that's what it's becoming. You rise slowly, joints clicking in protest. The palace is even quieter now, caught in that hush between moonset and dawn. Somewhere far off, a rooster crows, and you swear he sounds half asleep too, wandering. Back through the maze of shadowed corridors, you begin to hear it, again the splashing of water, the faint rhythmic scrape of pumice stone, the soft murmur of women's voices, another bath. You might assume the queen's bathing rituals were extravagant because she was queen. But in truth, daily bathing among the 9th century Ethiopian nobility was a whole ecosystem. These weren't just ablutions, they were events, and they were tightly choreographed. Much like a tea ceremony or a royal procession, you step into a new chamber different from the last. This one is smaller, more intimate. Only 3 women inside. One you recognize immediately, the queen herself. She's seated on a low wooden stool, her arms bare, as a young attendant carefully scrapes her forearms with a thin piece of curved horn. This isn't exfoliation for beauty. It's part of a practice called gefla, a type of skin cleansing, common in the Horn of Africa and beyond. Thin layers of dry skin are gently removed, not to whiten the skin, as later colonial ideologies would assume, but to allow the body to absorb oils and ointments more effectively. And though no one will say it out loud, it's also a symbolic removal of the day's burdens. You wash off more than just dirt. The queen sees you, but doesn't stop the ritual. She offers you a glance and the smallest nod. Permission, you slip into the space. Like steam joining the room, one of the attendants begins grinding something in a shallow stone mortar, fragrant, coarse, and slightly sour smelling. It's niter kiba, the spiced clarified butter used not just in cooking, but also in skin treatments. You hadn't expected that cooking fat as lotion, but apparently. When mixed with crushed fenugreek and a pinch of dried marjoram, it becomes a balm so luxurious it was once compared to imported ambergris. A fringe theory claims this precise blend was used not just by royalty but by priestesses, too, especially those connected to moon cults and Aksumite temples. Historians still argue whether this crossover was real or a romantic fabrication by 19th century European explorers who liked to mix sensuality with their scholarship. The queen stretches out her legs and an attendant kneels to rub the butter mixture into her calves. The gesture is slow, meditative. There's no sense of servitude here, it feels closer to reverence. One of the women hums a lullaby under her breath, and the queen joins in, almost absently. You can't understand the words, but the melody carries that universal hush of mothers. Calming children, nor maybe queens, calming kingdoms. You're invited to sit. A small bowl of cool water is passed your way. Floating inside are a few crushed leaves tenadam or Ethiopian rue. The scent is sharp, peppery, and a little bitter. You dip your fingers in it instinctively. The tingle is immediate. The queen finally speaks, eyes still half-lidded. You dream? She asks, as if picking up a conversation you never had. You hesitate. Yes. She nods, as though that answer has unlocked something. Dreams after bathing carry more truth, she says, because the body forgets what it hides. That phrase rings through your head like a bell. The body forgets what it hides. The queen leans forward slightly. An attendant wraps a wet cloth around her hands, pressing gently between each finger. This is no longer hygiene, it's ritual, pure and deliberate. And here comes another layer to all this. Scent layering. Each oil, resin, herb, or scrub is chosen not just for its properties, but for how it interacts with the others. Remember? Earlier in the first bath chamber, the queen smelled like camphor, musk, and smoke. Here, in this more intimate setting, she smells of juniper ash, lemongrass, and aged cedar oil. The layering isn't random. It's coded. Each combination signals something different. Fertility, mourning, courtship, diplomacy, even dreams. A traveling merchant might wear cloves and frankincense to signify he brings news from the coast. A grieving noblewoman might steep her garments in rue and hyssop for 7 days, her scent announcing her sorrow before her face does. You wonder what your scent says right now. It's probably something like confused time traveler, a hint of eucalyptus. Slight anxiety notes. The queen laughs. Out loud. It startles everyone. She looks at you and says, "You're not from here." You blink? No. She just nods again. I thought so. You breathe like someone used to square rooms. Whatever. That means it's not inaccurate? Then she holds up a small glass vial-tinted green, stoppered with beeswax. Inside, a golden oil glows faintly. This is mine, she says. Made only for me. You'll help me apply it. And so you do. You take the vial, unstopper it, and pour 3 drops, exactly 3, into your palm. The scent bursts instantly. Citrus peel, wild myrrh, and something metallic underneath. Like rain on bronze, you rub it gently into her arms. Her shoulders, her collarbone. Every motion precise, reverent. It's quiet work. Somehow it feels familiar. As if for one fleeting moment, you've done this before. Not in this life, but perhaps in another. The queen closes her eyes as you finish applying the last drops of oil. You're left with the faintest shimmer on your fingertips, golden warm and oddly grounding. It smells like the past remembered too clearly. I like silence, she says. Eyes still shut, but only the kind filled with things unsaid. You nod, though you're not sure if it's a response or just an instinct. The queen doesn't require answersonly presence. She stands slowly, and her attendants move like a flock of birds sensing invisible currents. One drapes a gauzy indigo robe across her shoulders. Another collects the used cloths and bowls. The third holds out a hand knot to help her balance, but to hold space, to be near. You expect the moment to end there? The ritual is over. The queen, anointed, wrapped, reborn in the quiet armor of oils and old songs. But then she turns and says, "Now it's your turn." Your heart does something strange. Not fear, not even surprise. Being seen too clearly? "I'm not," you begin, the instinctive protest of someone who doesn't know the rules. But she interrupts with a gesture. All bodies need tending. You're gently ushered to sit. A low stool, shallow basin of water placed in front of you, an herb bundle passed under your nose, mint mostly, and dried orange peel. It's bright and sharp. The queen herself dips her hands into the water. Her fingers are cool, and just like that, history folds in on itself. You are no longer a stranger in someone else's time. You are part of a world where queens touch skin not out of duty, but ritual, where roles blur and softness is a shared language, not a weakness. She begins to rub your forearms with a cloth soaked in niter kiba and crushed fenugreek. It's slow, gentle, circular. "You smell of forgetting," she says. "Matter dash of dash factly you." Want to ask what that means, but again, the queen gives no space for question. She is already moving to your hands, pressing into each knuckle like she's looking for a keyhole. One of the attendants begins humming again. This time, the melody is familiar, vaguely medieval, as though something Gregorian wandered south, across centuries and came back sweeter. The queen leans in. "You must carry this memory with you," she whispers. "Most don't get to." And you realize this isn't indulgence, it's transmission. This ritual isn't just for her body, or yours. It's a message, preserved in oil and motion, coded history passed through touch. The water cools, the candles burn lower, and outside, the sun has begun to rise, brushing the sky with saffron and plum. You feel clean, not like you've washed something off, but like something heavy has finally been set down. The queen dries her hands on a linen cloth, then hands it to you, a keepsake, she says. You nod, and as the dream, because surely this is a dream, fades into the light. One last thought lands quietly in your mind. Some histories aren't written in stone, they're written in skin. The queen steps back, and just for a moment, the chamber feels still like the inside of a seashell. You sit there, cloth in hand, warm oil still clinging to your skin, unsure what to say. But again, words aren't expected here. The air is perfumed, with incense now, subtle and smoky, curling up from a long copper censer being swung gently by a new attendant who must have entered while you were lost in the queen's touch. It smells of sandalwood and myrrh scents, older than most empires, older even than the faiths that once used them in temples and tombs. You stand, unsure whether you're permitted to do so, but the queen nods as if she's been waiting for you. To reclaim your legs? "Come," she says simply, and for a moment, you imagine this is how every journey in history began, not with a proclamation, but with a calm command from someone who already knows the path. You follow her through a curtained passage lined with thick tapestries. The images on the fabric are fantastically leaping antelope with human eyes, rivers shaped like serpents, suns with faces. But the threadwork is precise, even in the dim light, and you realize these aren't decorations. They're a kind of tactile scripture. It's meant to be touched as much as seen. The queen pauses, pressing her fingers to one particular panel. It depicts a woman seated beneath a baobab tree, washing another's feet. "My grandmother," she says. "She said every queen must serve before she rules." You nod, that tracks. Historical records often gloss over the lineage of female rulers in Africa, reducing them to footnotes or curiosities, but oral histories hold more. In some Ethiopian noble lineages, queens were expected to not only govern, but to heal, anoint, and midwife. The power wasn't just political, it was embodied, and now that embodiment continues. The next chamber is darker still, lit only by filtered shafts of daylight spilling through latticework windows. The walls are lined with amphorae clay jugs, stamped with symbols, crescents, crossed reeds, spirals. "This," the queen says, brushing her hand along one jar, "is where our oils sleep." She gestures to one of the attendants, who pulls down a smaller vessel, pops the wax seal, and carefully pours a drop into her palm. She doesn't speak the name of the oil, but you smell it immediately: cardamom, frankincense, and something sharper, almost citrus-like. This was used once a year, she explains. Only during the new moon bathing when we honored the waters and asked them to return. A ritual within a ritual. The queen dips her fingers into the oil and dots it across your forehead, Cressa mirrored. Not for you necessarily, for the memory of the moment. Water never forgets where it's been. She says, not to you, but maybe to the Amphari. Historians still argue whether these bathing rites were spiritual ceremonies, medicinal care, or political theater designed to inspire loyalty. The truth you're beginning to suspect is yes, all of the above. In this palace, function and reverence live together like twins. You walk now, side by side. As the queen shows you the last room in the corridor, modest space with a low bench, a bowl of salt, and a single comb made of carved ebony. I used to sit here for hours, she says, untangling my thoughts. And indeed, that's what the comb looks like. It's four-knot hair, but memory. Nice. You imagine her here as a child, staring into that same brass mirror, unsure what kind of ruler she might become. The queen takes a seat on the bench and offers you the comb. You hesitate. I don't want to overstep. She smiles, softly, kindly. History is made by those who dare to touch it, and so you begin, slowly, carefully. The comb moves through her tightly coiled hair with quiet resistance. It's like wind through a grove of ancient trees. You say nothing. Neither does she. The silence is companionable, like two minds agreeing to keep one secret. And as you work, a curious detail rises to the surface of your thoughts, one you'd read about but never quite believed until now. There were records that described some queens requesting their attendants to sing the names of their ancestors while grooming. It's not loudly, not like a chant, but softly, like a lullaby. A form of continuity. The queen hums now, and you think, no, you know it's one of those songs. A name floats to your ears. Makeda another, Yoda another. Sebelwingle, each a queen, each a thread. You add your breath to hers, not with words, but with presence. It's enough. Eventually, she takes the comb from your hand, finishes the last few passes herself, and sets it down. This, she says, is how we don't forget. You nod. You feel that truth in your bones as she rises and begins to walk. Again, the light catches the oil on your skin, and hers alike, both glowing. Both luminous. You follow, not because you must, but because you've become part of this ritual now. You've moved from observer to participant, from guest to bearer of the story, and in a world where stories like these often vanish without a trace. That may be the most important role of all. The corridors wind now tighter, narrower, as if the palace itself is testing your willingness to follow. You pass a hall of mirrors, but not the kind you're used to. These are warped copper sheets, burnished but uneven, reflecting not so much your image as your outline. You see your silhouette walking alongside the queen's, always a step behind, never quite in focus. You know, she says, almost wistfully, this part of the palace wasn't built for kings or queens. It was made for stories. You glance around. Every surface door frame, ceiling beam, even the floor tiles is carved or painted. Tiny scenes unfold in every crevice. A goat caught in the rain. Two lovers hiding behind a fig tree. A woman giving birth under a full moon. Grand myths, just lives. It's ordinary, eternal. She pauses at a small alcove where a spiral staircase descends. A candle flickers at the top step. Most visitors never go down here, she says. You've listened well. That's the price of entry. You descend. The air is cooler, here dense, with the scent of earth and age. Each step you take seems to muffle sound, like you're walking into history's lungs. The queen follows behind you now, her sandals making soft contact with the stone at the bottom. You find yourself in a circular chamber, in the center, a shallow pool of dark water, still as obsidian. Around it, 12 pillars, each carved with a single face, old worn yet unmistakably regal. The queens of the line. This is where we reflect, she says. Literally and otherwise, you kneel beside the pool. For a moment, The surface holds nothing. Then faintly you begin to see. But it isn't your face, it's hers. Who ruled in drought? The one who negotiated with invaders by sending honey in silence? The one who disguised herself as a servant to escape a coup? Their stories ripple beneath the surface, not shown in full, but hinted. Most people think we wore crowns, the Queen says quietly. But that was never the point. You look at her. We wore memory, she continues. Wove it into our hair, stirred it into our food, hid it in our dances, in our salt. That way, even when the books burned or the kingdoms fell, the remembering survived. You think of the comb, the oil, the hum of the names. None of it was show. All of it was archive. She sits beside you, legs crossed, hands resting loosely on her knees. You've bathed in our water, she says, anointed with our oil, brushed the past into the present. What will you do now? It isn't a test. It's an invitation. You look once more into the water. Now you do see your own face, reflected not as it is, but as it might be. Not wiser, not older, but more rooted. You blink and it's gone. The Queen stands, you rise with her. Neither of you speaks. When you climb the steps again, the air seems warmer. A breeze stirs the curtains now. Somewhere, drums begin, slow, ceremonial. The Queen nods. And you understand. The ritual has ended, but the story is yours to carry. And stories, real ones, do not fade. They echo softly, endlessly, like water over stone, like oil on skin, like memory, humming through a comb in the hand of a queen. You're walking again, though the floor feels different, no more textured, almost sandy beneath your feet, as if the palace is slowly blending into the earth it rose from. The Queen walks beside you once more, but she says little now. The atmosphere has shifted. Ahead, a small open-air courtyard, square in shape and surrounded by towering stone walls blanketed in flowering vines. Nightbirds echo softly overhead. In the center of the courtyard, a low stone table awaits, a surface polished, but cracked with age. This is not a place of ritual. This is a place of records. You sit opposite the Queen, your knees folded beneath. You want a cushion that seems to have been placed just for you or us, or maybe centuries ago. From a small side niche, she retrieves something unexpected, a thin stack of parchment. Wrapped tightly in soft leather and bound with red twine. These are the bathing records, she says, almost deadpan. We were meticulous. You blink, she isn't joking. Every bath temperature, herbs used, mood of the Queen, even how long she hummed during the rinses catalogued in these ancient pages. She flips one open at random. June 14th, 853. Water with crushed sandalwood. Bark, rose ash for softness. The Queen wept for the duration of the rinse, then composed a song about droughts-resistant millet. Effective scrub. You glance at her. She shrugs. It was a particularly dry year. Each entry isn't just hygienic data, it's emotional cartography. Some read like poetry, others like weather reports for the soul. Historians still argue. She says, casually leafing through another page, whether these records were spiritual confessions or the earliest form of government memos. Personally, I think it was both. You're handed a page. You read it silently. November 2nd, 867. She ordered salt brought from the mountains. Bathed in it, did not speak, did not emerge for 2 full hours. When she did, her eyes were dry and she demanded we begin negotiations. You stare at the words. There's no mention of who she is, you'll notice, says the Queen. We rarely use names in these records. Queens change. But salt remains. You look up at her. Did all queens bathe before war? A soft smile, of course. Yeah, you must be clean before you stain the land. A breeze flutters the pages. You catch a whiff of lemon balm and juniper, like echoes of ingredients once written down, still clinging to memory. Then she shows you the last page, blank. It's yellowed and brittle, but untouched. This one's yours, she says. You're confused, but I'm not. You are now, she interrupts gently. You've seen, felt, listened. You've carried water and let it change you. You sit in silence for a moment, a page resting between your fingers like a fragile inheritance. Write what you remember, she says. Not the facts, the steam, the oil, the way your skin felt when history seeped into it. You stare at the page. You consider writing something clever, but the stillness of the courtyard makes you pause. Eventually, with the Queen watching, you begin. The bath was warm. The room hummed. And for the first time, I understood why oil mattered more than perfume. Stop, that's enough. The Queen nods. The record will remember you now. She doesn't collect the page. It's yours to keep her leave behind. You rise, a little lighter than before, and just like that, the courtyard dims, not from darkness, but from closure, as if the palace is folding itself inwards. A distant drumbeat returns. A rhythm you didn't realize you missed. The Queen's eyes meet yours, knowing, amused, grateful. Time to go, she says. But where? She tilts her head. Forward. Always forward.
Always.
The vines on the wall part. A narrow path appears, lined with torches that flare to life as you approach. You walk behind you. The Queen remains seated at the table, flipping pages you cannot see. You do not turn back. The story has shifted, and now walks with you. The torchlit path winds through narrow corridors now, far removed from the lavish courts and sunlit pools of earlier. It smells of cool earth and drying herbs, the scent of endings and something like fresh parchment. You can almost hear the faint scribble of a quill echoing through the stone as you walk. Your fingers brush gently against the wall, and the texture surprises you. Etched patterns, deeply grooved and polished smooth by the centuries. They're not decorative. They're writing. The walls are inscribed with bath recipes. You laugh under your breath. Of course they are. Chamomile, one section reads, to calm the spirit after failed harvests. Mint and goat milk, says another, for seductive purposes, particularly when negotiations depend on charisma. In one curious formula, crushed emerald rose vinegar, silence. Do not look anyone in the eye after bathing in this, especially not yourself. You pause at that one. Historians still argue. A disembodied voice mutters, was it yours? Whether such recipes were metaphorical instructions, psychological conditioning, or just very expensive nonsense. It's never quite clear, is it? You press forward and the walls start to widen. The tunnel swells into a larger room. Not grand, but warm, humble, like a midwife's chamber. Clay jars line wooden shelves. Some are broken, some sealed tight with wax. Names carved into the stoppers. Sahai, Eleni, Merit. Names that sound like lullabies. You lift one and sniff. Sage, lavender, crushed cinnamon bark, and something unmistakable. Clove oil, sharp and spicy. It jolts you upright for a second, like memory slapped into the bloodstream. There's a small fountain in the middle of the chamber. Not decorative, eh? Functioning bath. Simple. Honest. Just water flowing from a lion-shaped spout into a circular stone basin. No steam, no oil, no procession. This is how it began. The first queens didn't have cedarwood tubs or glass flasks of frankincense. They had water, stone, and intention. You crouch and place your hand into the basin. The water is cold, but in the grounding way, not the cruel way. It anchors you, tells you this is what all the other baths aspired to, not luxury, not spectacle, contact. You sit beside the pool, letting the sound of the water do what entire armies of perfumed handmaidens tried to replicate. You breathe. The stone beneath you is uneven and damp, and you don't care. From the corner of your eye, a familiar figure returns. The queen, now dressed in travel robes, her hair tied up with twine and shells. She walks with a different posture, not the deliberate grace of ritual, but the loose, easy gait of someone who's made peace with her feet. Did they always start here? Yes, she sits beside you. Sometimes. Sometimes they had to be brought back here after forgetting. Forgetting.
What?
That you're not special just because you're perfumed. You both smile. I think I understand now. You say, meaning it. Do you? You hesitate? Maybe not fully. That's enough, she replies. Understanding ruins the mystery. She scoops a handful of water and lets it drizzle slowly through her fingers. They used to say, she adds, that this bath knew who you were before you became queen. You lean over it. Nothing stares back, just ripples breaking. The surface over and over, never quite settling. You ask, did it know who you were? The queen's smile softens. I think it knew who I was pretending not to be. There's a long pause. Then you both laugh. It echoes strangely off the stone. She rises. You follow? You expect her to lead you out, but she gestures toward a sealed door in the far wall. That one's yours to open, she says. You've come far enough. You look at it heavy, wood reinforced with metal. The latch is simple. Old. The kind of door that doesn't care how important you are. Just whether or not you knock first. You place your hand on the latch before you pull. The queen says one more thing. Leave the bath behind. Take only the water in your bones. You nod and push. The door creaks open, not into grandeur, but into wind, dry, crisp air, moonlight. You step out onto a cliffside platform. Below the valley where the queen's palace once stood, misty and blue under the stars. It looks smaller from up here. She was right forward. Always forward. The wind greets you like an old friend who doesn't ask questions. It tugs at your robe, curls around your wrists, and whispers in a language only remembered at high altitudes. The stars above feel unusually close, like you could scoop them up in your palms and stir them into a potion. You're standing on the cliff's edge now. Not dangerously close, but close enough to feel the void yawning out below. The kind that makes you question every step you took to get here far beneath. The distant silhouette of the palace glimmers, its domes, towers, and courtyards, now miniatures. In moonlight, but you're not looking down, you're looking out. The queen steps beside you again. Or maybe she never left. You know, she says softly, they used to bathe by moonlight when they had something to confess. Confess to whom? To themselves? She shrugs. Or the night. Same thing. You stand silently, letting the thoughts sink in. There's a low stone bench nearby. The two of you sit. Her fingers, old now. When did that happen? Run along the fabric of her robe as she speaks. There was a queen named Ginnet, she begins, who bathed every night before addressing her court. Not because she was dirty, but because she feared what her voice might become without that pause. Without that reset. You picture it. A quiet chamber, steam rising, guards posted. Her counselors waiting in silence while she soaked. Genet's enemies said she was weak, the queen adds. She spent too long in water and not enough time at war. But she ruled 38 years. They ruled for 6 before their heirs poisoned each other over goat pasture. You raise an eyebrow. Real story. Historians still argue whether the poisoning was real or poetic metaphor. I say, if your story ends in a goat field, maybe you earned it. You both chuckle, wind rustling the dry grasses at your feet. Behind you, the door to the bath chamber has already swung closed. No going back now. The queen folds her hands in her lap and tilts her face to the sky. There's a myth that the first rain of every season contains the soul of the last queen who died. You glance at the stars. What happens if it doesn't rain? She smirks. Then she's not ready to leave. A silence settles between you, but it's not the uncomfortable kind. It's the kind that breathes. You close your eyes for a moment, and the wind seems to shift around you, less like breeze, more like memory. You're walking backward through time again, back to a mud-walled hut. Centuries before the palaces, a young girl carries water from a stream, hands raw from the cold. Her mother pours it into a carved-out basin and adds crushed leaves, a few flower petals, and something that smells like ginger. No incense, no silk, just love. This girl will become queen one day. But tonight she's just a daughter soaking her feet while her mother sings. And just like that, you're back on the cliffside still. You. Just more ... layered. The queen rises. She looks taller than before, even though her back is a little hunched now. Come, she says. Extending a hand, you follow her across the platform toward another narrow path. This one carved directly into the rock. As you descend slowly, torchlight begins to flicker from below. You smell sage, gen, and lamange. RASS. The path opens into a circle. Not a bathhouse, a theater. Carved stone benches. It's facing inward around a central space. No stage, just a flat open circle. Ritual ground. The queen gestures for you to sit. She walks into the center and begins to speak. Not in modern Amharic, not even in Giez. Older, wordless, a cadence, a rhythm, more breath than language. She raises her arms, then lowers them, palms open to the earth. Others emerge quietly, women draped in white cotton, faces serene, some young, some impossibly old. You realize these are the queens who came before. They do not speak, they walk in slow procession. One by one to the center, dipping their fingers into a basin and touching it to their foreheads. The your queen joins them last. She turns. To you, it's your bath now, she says. You rise, trembling a little. There's no water, no tub, but you understand. This bath is memory. You walk forward. The circle parts for you. The ancestors do not speak, but you feel their nods. The cool drops of water on your neck. You step into the center. Close your eyes. You imagine the oils, the heat, the steam. You feel the gentle scrape of a handmaiden's fingers across your scalp. You hear the splash of water against stone, and just like that, you're clean. You don't open your eyes immediately. Let the moment stretch suspended in time. It's caught in that liminal space where water could drip from your eyelashes, even if your face is dry. The silence in the circle deepens. Not empty, but reverent. The kind of quiet you only find after a ritual, not because it's demanded, but because it feels earned. When you do finally look around, the circle is empty, not abandoned, just, it's no longer needed. The ancestors are gone, your queen is gone, but the basin remains. Small, simple, carved from smooth volcanic stone. There's no water in it anymore, only a scattering of dried leaves. Few flower petals. One strand of gray hair that catches the moonlight like a silver thread. You step back from the circle and look up above you. Stars still gleam, but the sky's begun to pale at the edges. Not quite dawn, but close enough to remind you that time, for all its meandering, eventually loops forward. You take the same path up the cliff. Slower now, each footstep crunching softly against the gravel. By the time you reach the palace terrace, again the horizon is bruised with the faintest blush of gold. A rooster crows somewhere classic. Yes, but in this case, absolutely accurate. Even in the shadows of history, poultry has impeccable timing. The courtyards are still empty, no servants rushing, no guards at attention. The world hasn't woken. Yet, and that's when you understand the queen's bath ritual wasn't about preparing for the day. It was about claiming this moment, the final sliver of night. The space between yesterday's burdens and tomorrow's expectations. She wasn't washing off the world. She was making space to exist beyond it. You wander through the palace slowly, following memory more than map. The columns still hum with heat from yesterday's sun. The mosaic floors remain cool under your bare feet. You pass a chamber where oils are stored, tiny clay jars with etched markings. Lion, myrrh, fig blossom, smoke. You recognize the lion. It's the oil she placed on your temples hours ago. Or maybe days. You're not quite sure anymore. In the next room, baskets sit stacked, woven tight, their lids shaped like crowns. These would hold the queen's garments, the afterbath wraps embroidered with scenes from royal parables, a monkey outwitting a leopard, a falcon returning from the underworld, a child holding a snake like a shepherd's staff. The story is stitched into thread, because ink can fade. You touch one gently. The linen is warm, as if someone just wore it, and maybe they did, or will. You turn a corner and find yourself back in the bathing chamber. It looks different now, not dim, not ethereal, just lived in. Used towels draped over hooks, steam clinging to the domed ceiling. Two small copper cups left on the rim of the soaking pool. You walk to the water's edge and look down. The surface is still, not silent. Tiny ripples move as if stirred by a breath you didn't hear. Your reflection stares back. You look older, not aged, just seasoned. As though you carry the weight of knowledge, but gently, like a crown of woven grass. Behind you, soft footsteps, a child appears. Could be 6, maybe 7. Dressed in a simple tunic, eyes wide, curious, but unafraid. She says nothing, just walks to the water and dips her fingers in. She doesn't flinch. The heat is familiar. You watch as she wipes a few drops on her forehead, then on her wrists, then places her palm gently against the stone. A gesture older than language. She turns to you and speaks only once. You can go now. And somehow, you know she's right. Because the ritual is never about permanence. It's about release. You nod and begin to walk, not toward an exit, not toward a door, but toward the edge of the chamber where steam coils up like smoke signals and disappears into the ceiling's carved vents. As you reach it, the air shifts, and suddenly, you're not in the bathhouse. You're outside again. A long stone road stretches before you. The kind of path that doesn't tell you where you're going, but lets you know you're meant to go there. The palace rises behind you, framed by the fading stars. You hear laughter somewhere, not mocking familiar. It's like a grandmother telling a joke. About a neighbor's bad breath in church. You don't look back, but you smile, because this journey, this long, warm, perfumed, whispered, lion-oiled journey was never meant to be about its destination. It was a bath. And you're clean. Even if you're not entirely sure what was washed off, there's something freeing about that. You walk slowly. Maybe you'll find another palace. Maybe a stream like the one Queen Janet once used. Maybe a simple hut with a singing mother. Maybe nothing at all. Doesn't matter. You're walking forward. And that's enough. The scent of frankincense lingers on your sleeve, and the stars just beginning to fade. The path winds downward now gently, like a lullaby hummed under breath. No sharp turns. No sudden stops. Just earth softened by time and sandals. You don't rush. There's no reason to. The bath taught you that, along the sides of the path. Plants you can't quite name sway in the breeze. Some look familiar mint, maybe. Others seem like they belong to stories, not botany books. One of them smells like your childhood, but you can't place why. You pass a wooden gate, old, unlatched. A fig tree leans over it like a sleepy guard. You pause, hand resting on the top beam, and look through. Inside a garden, not grand. Just tended a few rows of vegetables, pots of herbs, and a stone bench shaded by woven reeds. There's a woman sitting there, not the queen, not anyone you know. She's shelling beans. Her hands move with the rhythm of someone who's shelled 1,000 before and will shell 1,000. More, she looks up, smiles, nods once, and returns to her work. No invitation, but no dismissal either, just acknowledgement. You keep walking. The sun's started its rise. You can feel it before you see it warmth touching your shoulder, then the side of your face, like fingers brushing hair from your brow. When the first rays finally break over the ridge, they hit the stone wall ahead of you, illuminating a faded carving, a lioness lying beside a pool. You recognize her? Not from history books, not from palace murals. From the bath she was there, not literally, but in spirit. Oil. In presence, you place your palm against the stone. It's warm somewhere behind you. A bell rings, low wooden, like someone tapping a bowl with a spoon. The day has begun. But you're not going back. You're not late. You're right where you should be. Ahead, the path forks. One way leads downhill, toward what sounds like a market waking up. Goats bleating, pots clanging. Someone laughing too loud too early. The other leads into a grove of trees, so thick they stitch the sunlight into patches on the ground. You stand at the fork, then laugh, not because the choice. It's funny, but because it's yours. And that's the whole point. The queen didn't show you a path, she gave you. It's permission to choose one, so you do. Not with certainty, not with fear, just with steps. And that's how the story ends. Not with a door closing, but with one opening. Not with a crown, but with wet hair and quiet joy. And maybe just, maybe a little lion oil still clinging to your skin. You tread softly now, the earth beneath your feet no longer the dusty palace courtyards or the polished stone of ritual halls. This ground is something else entirely wild, unscripted. The underbrush sways with the movement of small creatures you'll never see. Birds you don't recognize flit between branches overhead, each song foreign and familiar all at once. There's no one here but you. And yet somehow, that's more than enough. The trees grow denser as you walk, leaves press inward from all. Sides like old women fussing over your tunic, you part them gently and step into a clearing. In its center stands a wooden structure, round and low, roofed with palm thatch. It's not a temple, not a palace, not even a proper bathhouse, but it smells of lemongrass and old secrets. And something about it tells you it has always been here. You step inside, no guards, no attendants. Clay wide and full, the water ripples when you breathe. Not from wind, there is none, but from breath. Yours, you dip a hand into the bowl. It's cool, shockingly so, and your skin prickles at the touch. You lift the water to your face. It smells like crushed petals and copper and soil. You don't ask where it came from. Some things are meant to be received, not explained. Around. The room, hanging on hooks carved into the walls, are robes of many colors. Red like ochre, yellow like harvest, deep black, soft as sleep. You run your fingers across each one, then pick the one the moment chooses for you. You drape it over your shoulders. It fits. Of course it does. There's a mirror bronze. Old, the kind that reflects only some truths. You catch your reflection. Not regal, not common, just human. Someone who has walked through oils and songs and firewood smoke and emerged not as something new, but as something remembered. Because isn't that what the queens were doing all along? Not transforming themselves, but remembering who they were before the rituals, before the titles, before the perfumed expectations. The robe whispers when you move. You sit on a cushion near the basin and let your hands rest in your lap. The air smells of earth after rain. You think of the queen again not as a ruler, but as a person, as someone who bathed not to impress, not to cleanse, not even to pray, but to feel herself inside her own body again, to scrub away the weight of ceremony in return. Just for a moment, to skin and breath and quiet, a beetle crawls across the... Florida has no idea you're watching, or maybe it does outside. The wind rustles the trees like a mother brushing child's hair. Time passes, but not the kind measured in hours or duties, the kind that just happens like steam rising, like breath exhaling, like a story coming to rest. And in this moment, you realize this wasn't just a journey through the past. It was a rehearsal for presence, slow return. Not to palaces or history or even ancient queens, but to yourself. The bath was never about them. It was always about you. And maybe that's the most royal thing of all. You're still there, in that quiet clearing, the robe soft against your skin. The basin's stillness echoing the hush inside your chest. The whisper of wind outside grows quieter now, not because it fades, but because you're tuning into something. Deeper your own heartbeat aligning with rhythms far older than palaces or prayer, from outside. There's the faint scent of wood smoke, someone's cooking fire, maybe miles away, or centuries. Time blurs at the edges out here, like watercolor in the rain, and as you breathe slow and steady, you think of what came after the bath for those Ethiopian queens, because the ritual wasn't the end of the day, it was the beginning, freshly. Bathed, adorned in clean linen and softened skin. They would step back into their world with a strange paradox of power and peace. And no, not all of them ruled kindly, not all were remembered fondly. But for those moments after the bath, they all stood on even ground with the universe. Every breath, a quiet act of defiance against decay. Imagine stepping out into the palace. Corridor, your skin still dewy from the oils, the scent of myrrh clinging to your collarbone. You pass by servants who suddenly stand straighter in your presence, not because of fear, but because you are radiating presence. It's not magic. It's the residue of ritual, and that makes people pay attention. Your hair. Once tangled from desert winds, now falls in clean waves down your back. Some nights it's braided tightly, each plait infused with protective herbs like rue or lavender. Other nights it's left loose-free to mingle with the moonlight as you sit in silence on the roof of your palace. Watching the desert cool, there were decisions to make, always. Trade agreements, court alliances, the whispering threat of war, and of course, the quieter wars of inheritance, gossip, tradition. But for a few sacred hours, post-bath, those concerns softened. Because here's the secret. The bath didn't just cleanse the queens, it clarified them. Historians still debate how much power royal Ethiopian women held in the 9th century. Some argue they were mere figureheads, adorned but voiceless. Others point to surviving records, oral traditions, grave goods suggesting otherwise, that these queens negotiated treaties, led campaigns, even dictated royal succession. But the truth, like the best kind of perfume, lingers between known notes. What's clear is this: they used ritual as armor, not against enemies, but against erasure. Even their jewelry told stories. Amulets pressed against the heart, earrings shaped like crescent moons, anklets that chimed softly as they walked, just enough sound to remind a room who had arrived, but not loud enough to be a threat. Not directly, anyway. And when they returned from bathing, they brought that music with them. You can almost hear it now, the faint jingle of copper against skin. The echo of their footsteps down those dark palace halls, their presence turning, torchlight golden. Every queen a constellation walking. They knew something we've almost forgotten, that care is a form of resistance. To bathe when the world asks you to lead, to anoint yourself when the court demands answers, to rest in your skin when the scrolls pile high with decisions. It's not vanity, that's strategy. And you begin to wonder, how much of modern life has trained you to believe that pausing for yourself is selfish? The queens would laugh at that. They'd pour another pitcher of warmed honey water over their shoulder and say, "Come back when you've remembered what a body is for." And so you sit in this imagined space, the memory of a moment that probably happened 1,000 different ways across 1,000 dusty mornings. Because what matters isn't the exact detail of the ritual, it's the repetition of care, the fact that no matter how chaotic the palace or how tense the court, the queens made time to step away, to cleanse, to breathe. They didn't escape their power. They fed it, and when they returned, they didn't shout. They glided. You feel yourself smile because maybe this isn't just history after all. Maybe it's permission. The hallway stretches ahead of you, now tiled, cool under your bare feet. The last droplets of bathwater trailing behind you like tiny blessings. You glide, just like they did. Not because someone's watching, but because the bath made you. Remember how outside the stars are starting to burn through the dusk? That deep indigo sky curling down around the palace like velvet? Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays a slow, wandering melody, minor notes that echo over the stone like they're afraid to vanish. The queens of 9th century. Ethiopia knew this time well, the sacred after. After the cleansing, after the drying, after the oiling. The body is no longer raw from the day, and not yet braced for tomorrow. It's a liminal hour, a hinge in time. This is when they wrote letters to kings in Nubia, to merchants in the Red Sea ports, to cousins across the highlands who had grown suddenly ambitious. Some sealed with wax, some carried by runners barefoot across burning sand. A few of the old stories are to be believed, written, not on parchment, but carved into rock or etched onto bark, placed in shrines for the spirits to carry. And what did they say? Historians still argue whether these women ruled in deed or only in name. But the records that survive don't whisper, they declare. trade contracts bearing female seals, petitions addressed to her radiance, even burial sites that defy gender expectations, weapons laid beside silken robes, fertility symbols interspersed with throne emblems. Of course, not every historian agrees. Some claim the names were honorary, that the true power lay behind the throne in priests or husbands or unseen advisors. But the evidence keeps surfacing like gold in a riverbed that suggests otherwise. That these women weren't echoes. They were thunder, so you stand now at the edge of your imaginary palace balcony, the desert air brushing your cheeks like a sigh. You look out over a kingdom lit by moonlight and torch flame. Your limbs are loose, your mind still warm from the scented oils. And you wonder, what does it mean to rule? Not the politics, or the land maps, or the ceremonies, but the ruling of your own space, your time, yourself. Because for these queens, bathing was more than hygiene. It was a ceremony of restoration, not just of the body, but of the role. The bath was a place to wash off other people's expectations, to remember the still, fierce core of who they were underneath. Imagine sitting cross-legged by a low table, sipping a dark, honey-thick beer made from teff, the same grain you once saw harvested in golden fields on a journey to the highlands. Your skin smells of frankincense and salt. You write in a language that now survives only in inscriptions. You pause after every line, not because you hesitate, but because you are savoring. It's easy to forget that rulers, especially female ones, had to carve space for moments like this. The court didn't pause. The taxes didn't wait. But still, they found time to oil their cuticles, to braid their hair with sprigs of scented grass, to sit silently and watch the firelight dance across the basin's rim. A reminder that power without presence is brittle, so they chose presence. And now, so do you. Even in this imagined landscape, even centuries removed, you feel something shift. A soft settling, a return. The bath is behind you, but its warmth lingers in your joints, in the gentle way you now hold your shoulders. Out in the courtyard, a servant passes with a basket of washed cloths. Another tends to a slow-burning lantern, trimming the wick like. It's a sacred act. These rituals, small, repeated, unhurried, are how the palace breathes. Not through grand declarations, but through care. The queens move through these spaces like poems, each step deliberate, its choice echoing long after they'd left the room. You wonder how many of their names have been lost, how many stories, dissolved into dust and silence. But the ritual remains, and tonight, you've remembered it. You let the desert wind kiss your face one last time before stepping back inside. The room is dim now, the fire low, shadows curling along the corners like sleeping cats. You curl into a cushioned bench, arms wrapped around your knees, and exhale. You have nothing left to prove. You bathed, you ruled, and now you rest. The palace quiets now, the way the sky fades from ink to velvet. Every hallway sighs with stillness. Your skin hums from the ritual's memory each pore, each scrub, each fragrant drop that ran across your spine like a blessing. The bath is over, but it hasn't left you. This is the hour for softness. The queens knew it well. Not every queen ruled with a scepter in hand and troops at the ready. Some ruled in whispers and glances, in the way they carried stillness into every room. Can almost feel one beside you now, her fingers dipped in warm oil, eyes half-lidded, hair let loose for the night. You wonder what secrets she carried that only the bath could coax free. Out in the garden, the moon climbs higher. The breeze moves through the reeds with a sound like silk unraveling. A servant places a vessel of warm milk near the doorway. Bedtime comfort reserved only for the favored few. You don't drink it yet. Instead, you listen. Somewhere beneath your chamber floor, a lion roars, not in anger, just a low, distant bellow. A reminder of the royal menagerie of power kept close, but not always on display. One queen, it said, kept a cheetah by her side during court meetings, letting its purring growl answer any dissent. Historians still argue whether this was true or merely legend. But then again, does it matter? The stories themselves are soft thrones, We rest on them because they make the past feel like a place we can walk through barefoot. Speaking of which, your feet are cold now. The stone has cooled. You wrap yourself in a thin, embroidered shawl, not because you're chilled, but because it completes the feeling. Fabric is a final layer of ritual, light as breath. The queens did this too. Cloaks laced with tiny copper beads. Designs stitched with symbols, birds, suns, crescents each, meaning something only they fully understood. A language worn on the skin. Above your bed, a woven tapestry ripples in the night breeze. It depicts a river, probably the Awash, maybe stylized. Fish leap along its length. A crocodile lurks in the reeds, and in the center, a woman seated cross-legged, hair braided into an arc like a crown. No face, just presence. And that's enough. You lie down now on soft cotton, layered over goat-hide mats. No pillows, just a slight elevation in the woven fabric to cradle your neck. Your hands rest on your chest, fingers interlace not in prayer but in peace. This is when dreams came for the queens. They believed bathing opened a pathway, not just to cleanliness, but to clarity. Some said it washed the noise off the mind, leaving it ready to receive. And sure, today we call that sleep hygiene, but let's be honest, it sounds better when it comes with incense in an entire room carved from limestone. The queens wrote down their dreams. Some had entire scrolls of visions. One fragment speaks of flying above the Red Sea, watching ships turn to birds, their sails flapping like wings. Another speaks of walking through fire and coming out soaked in honey. Historians still argue whether these were political metaphors or spiritual premonitions, or maybe just the mind unwinding after too much royal wine. Tonight, you don't need a dream interpreter. You just need to rest. The oil in your hair has dried now, leaving behind the faintest scent, maybe lavender, maybe juniper. You breathe it in as your eyes drift lower. Outside, the wind rustles the trees, and somewhere, a guard yawns loudly from his post. Let him. The palace is safe, because tonight the Queen You has bathed. You've readied the kingdom of your body for slumber. You've offered each limb a moment of reverence, allowed your skin to be worshipped with warmth. You've remembered that luxury, once upon a time, was not about excess, it was about intention. The fire dies down one last notch. Your breathing slows with it. The bath is long gone, but its echo? Still here in the looseness of your legs, in the softness of your gaze, even with eyes nearly shut. You're not asleep yet. But sleep is approaching, barefoot and quiet, like a servant with a secret. And so, the queens of 9th century Ethiopia forgotten, by some misinterpreted by others, are remembered tonight not in textbooks, but in sensation. In your own small ritual of stillness. They're not ghosts, they're guides. And this is their gift, rest made sacred. Asterisk, asterisk, and now. The final embers of this journey flicker out. You allow yourself to drift softly, gently into the quiet between thoughts. The palace, so vivid just moments ago, begins to dissolve, like mist at sunrise. The stone walls fade. The echoes hush. Even the scented oils are now just memory. All that remains is stillness. Your breath deepens, stretching out like the desert horizon, slow, unhurried, and endless. Each exhale is a thread unspooling, letting the worries of the waking world unravel and float away. There's nothing more to do, no more sandals to fasten, no more ceremonial words to recite. Tonight, you have honored the ancient queen's not through speeches or scrolls, but by listening. By bathing not just in water, but in attention. By giving yourself the rare permission to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to soften. Let the final sensations settle now. The warmth of stone kissed by sun, the whisper of linen against skin, the hush of dusk turning to night, all of it wraps around you like the last lines of a poem, curling gently into silence. Sleep will come soon. When it does, may it be easy. May it be deep. And may it carry with it the memory of royalty, not of crowns or courts, but of care, of calm, of queens. Who knew that even the strongest needed rest? So close your eyes, let go, and sleep well.